thing. We pointed this out earlier, even Meatloaf predicted his own death. We talked about Wag the Dog the other day and the story of Joe Biden naked, chasing his dog and then slipping on the rug and twisting his ankle while pulling the dog's tail, and how that was really just a way of jokingly referencing the fact that they were just wagging the dog to distract the media from Biden's laptop, Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, his laptop, and all the photos of him naked with the crack pipes. And it worked. Perfect wag the dog story. But anyway, if you haven't seen that movie, Wag the Dog, it's about a group of operatives. All right, Auto Hoax or GTFO. Some more Chief Crow. It is 3/24/2022, 5 minutes until 11 p.m. Mountain Time. We're a little bit early, but phones are open. 833-311-1984. We've been live off and on today. I did a live reading of my ebook, The Mandela Effect PSYOP Debunked. And then we played an interview, a conversation that we had with Jordan Maxwell back in June 2020 for an IPS Sunday School. Jordan Maxwell, rest in peace. Legend, 6 decades plus of Illuminati decode. Anybody who notices anything about celebrities and showing their hand signs, or the weird numbers, the patterns, the ubiquitous symbolism throughout movies that tells a consistent story, there's a language there, you can all trace it back to Jordan Maxwell. In fact, I would even say that, except for the reptilians, all of Ike's best material was pretty much just, I'm not going to say stolen, but yeah, it was Jordan Maxwell's ideas and concepts. And I don't think he got the attribution all the time. I know he had to deal with, well, fraud. Someone had purchased jordanmaxwell.com and they were profiting off of his content, left him destitute at times. And that's kind of how it is, though. I think if you make a name for yourself and you're out there and you're challenging the system, you're going to get trolls. And he got trolled, just as we all do. But anyway, he was a great speaker, researcher. The work speaks for itself. And you can find some of his recent appearances talking about world communism, the symbolism of the sun. Quite a lot to say. Can't really sum it up. You can't sum up 6 decades. But I will be interspersing the live stream with conversations that I've had with Maxwell, and then we'll go through other things related to it. We'll go down some of his content and re-examine the basis for this this correlation with the cult that runs the world and the cult of Saturn. Because really, all of this astrotheological decoding really started, I believe, with Maxwell. And people accuse people of being shills. I think people have said it's questionable that you can find a picture of him with George Lucas. He's had some interesting UFO related experiences. Make of it what you will. Are we dealing with agents? I don't know. Supposedly he thought that I was a Jesuit gatekeeper. It didn't stop us from talking, though. All right, we are joined here live, Clockwork 113, Vanden, Lilith, Kelemento, ME, Sagittarius Arms Society, and the Missing. Oh, yeah, that's right. Let me get back to business really quick here. So, here's what we did. I was trying to get the QAnon head, Ron Watkins, to call in for a live podcast to take calls and talk about his campaign. So, if you didn't know, the guy that was widely and still many people believe that he and his father are somehow behind Q. Yeah, he's in politics now. The QAnoners are getting ready for the midterms, and I thought, it might be interesting to call up Ron Watkins, who's now on the Arizona congressional primary ballot. But each time I call him, he's out there on the streets doing the work. He got the thousands of signatures that he needed. So, anyway, if you're not familiar with Ron Watkins, there's a documentary on HBO about he and his father and their role in fomenting QAnon. They may not be Q, but you can see how the entire thing was facilitated. This entire, I guess you could call it a grassroots movement, whatever it is. But anyway, he denies that he's Q. He's seeking to be a U.S. representative in Congress District 2. And so again, I'm going to be giving him a call here shortly. He was supposed to call, or yesterday we were supposed to connect, but again, he's been very busy. Let me go ahead and see who's in chat. Jared Boards, Infinite Muse, Salty Siren. Clockwork says his research website is very informative. Yes, definitely. It's jordanmaxwellshow.com. And originally we were going to just do this weekly thing, like a Sunday school Zoom conference, and go over one topic at a time. In fact, before we go on to the next topic, before I reach out to Q, Q adjacent, Ron Watkins. Let's go ahead and see here. I believe someone wanted to call in and talk about an experience with Jordan Maxwell. Let me go ahead and play this message.
Hey, sorry, Tim. This is Coyote Smoky Mirror at Coyote21, Coyote 2021 on Twitter. Sorry, I feel I'm still in the midst of your live cast. It sounds like this. Careful parsing of the available facts, and it requires a. And I wanted to call in to give my Jordan Maxwell tribute.
Okay, yeah, he called in while I was doing the live reading of the ebook after we had listened to the Jordan Maxwell interview.
And recounts the stories from the time I drove him from LA to the Laughlin UFO conference in Nevada. I can't remember what it's actually called, but it's in Laughlin annually. But it was quite an adventure, and just some really interesting anecdotes and some pretty phenomenal things he did on the way there too, which I gotta kind of validates a lot of strange stuff he's.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is leave the phones open if anybody wants to call. We'll be talking about this off and on over the next few days. The news is relatively new, so we don't have all the information. All we have is some very basic stuff. But anyway, let me go ahead and make this call before it gets any later. So give me just one moment here. I'm going to have to hit mute. So I'm going to go ahead and put on some nice calming background music, and I'll make this phone call brief. And then if everything's good, I will bring him into the live stream or have him call in, and then we'll take your questions, comments, and we'll see what happens. It should be interesting. So anyway, give me just a moment here. I'm going to turn on, let's see what we have here on the jukebox. Okay, probably some auto hoax, something calming, like I said. Calimento said, why did Jordan Maxwell think you were a gatekeeper? Probably because I don't talk about Jesuits. I just heard that from somebody who from him, but whatever. There's this tendency I've noticed where everybody is a gatekeeper if they don't agree with my particular explanation for things. Like, apparently, I'm a Mandela effect gatekeeper. I don't want you all to know about it, so I just don't talk about it, except in very mocking ways. And that's very sinister to them, because they believe that the Mandela effect gatekeepers know it's true. But even though we know it's true, we're trying to keep everybody else from finding out. Like that sounds like some Slytherin level behaviors there. Very sneaky, very snaky. Like, yep, I'm Mandela affected. I use it every day. It has practical applications. Can't find your keys? Just Mandela affect them into your hand. I mean, what you're actually talking about essentially is this idea that reality is that malleable. But there's this sense of superiority. So they don't run for help saying, "Oh my, things are changing. I want to go back." No, they're like, "Nope, we've leveled up." And every Mandela effect you had somehow levels you up a little bit higher. I mean, at least that's how they make it sound. Okay, so this is Space is Fake AF by Chief Crow. I'm going to make a phone call. I'll be right back. And if I'm back, it'll be with Ron Watkins here. Just give me a moment. I didn't want to blindside him and have him show up on a live stream without him realizing what we're up to. So give me just a moment to make this call. And again, this is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. Space is Fake AF. Again, if you have any sort of questions for him, just drop them in the comments now, and I'll be combing through the comments as I
Have you
progress
ever
here.
looked away from Earth into the black void?
Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas.
But don't let it say the sky was not the limit. You fly to the moon.
I'm sorry, the person you are trying to reach has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Please try your call again later. Goodbye.
1972. Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew. Except for the twinsies. Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest light you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars? Is it bright or is it dark? The vacuum of space, oh, the tomfoolery.
What happens if you get a leak on that? You have a leak. My bubble.
Okay, thank you for your patience, everyone. Sorry for the dead air for a moment there. I had to make a short phone call. We are attempting to get a guest to call in live here and talk about some things that are of interest to most of us here, I think. Talking about Ron Watkins, believed to be Q. And here's where that comes from. If you go to HBO, and somehow they manage to bill me every month. I don't remember signing up, but somehow, yes, once a month or so they come after me. Q Into the Storm, official website for the HBO series. This is the series which focuses on the individual that is now running for Congress, and we're going to be talking here soon. So anyway, save your questions. Phones are open 833-311-1984. Romeo Fuzzy Feet says, Rip Jordan, may he be free from Waterworld. Yeah, I like to think that at the end of this thing you get all the answers you deserve. Unless you're a rotten person and then you just get denied everything. Does anyone here believe in reincarnation? The Missing says if there is reincarnation, then back in the water literally. Right. I don't think it's all that far-fetched, but I mean, let's say there is something to the cult that is the world. Well, if you look at the story, the narratives, the rituals, the mythology, they seemingly believe in it. I mean, they literally worship the god of recycling. You think you're just recycling to save the environment? No, it's actually a cover for Baal worship. Or it's Osiris. It's the god of the earth, the green god, vegetation god. And the recycling symbol, yeah, it may be about your consumer waste, but no, actually it's, if you ask me, it has an esoteric aspect to it. Thus the three nails of the crucified, resurrecting earth god, sun god. And then also you have the negative space, gives you a nice hexagram. So this all, in my view, makes the recycling bin, the dumpster, into a folded up cross or a cube, altar of, again, Saturn. It's the same thing. So yes, and this is all something that I learned by researching. Originally, it was actually Jordan Maxwell's works. See, I was at a courthouse and I saw on the wall they had this painting, and you're not allowed to bring a camera in. So the mural on the wall had what looked like a tic-tac-toe design of these numbers in it. And I thought, that's weird. What is that? So I looked it up, and it turned out it was the square of Saturn. So I looked into it. What is the square of Saturn? The magical square of Saturn. So I got into this topic. I did a little dive into magical squares. And this is how I came across Jordan Maxwell's work. I was trying to figure out, okay, there's something going on here with this. This thing. It's got to be more than just a random work of art. And it turns out that Saturn, that's the thing I referenced, that design, yeah, it all ties in to what the courthouse represents and the judge and the black robes. And that's kind of where I got started. Then I started picking up on it in other places. Like the other day we were talking about the movie The Village. Well, the people in the village are controlled by the elders, and El is the name of Saturn. This is how one of their names of it. And then you can find it throughout the space program, this evidence of Saturn worship. I would even say that SpaceX in particular. X, the cross, is the cross of Saturn. Space is the new concept of heaven. The CubeSats. Well, the cube is an altar of Saturn. Satellites, Saturn, El. Lights in the sky, Elohim, lights that came down from above, messengers of light. Satellites are there to relay messages. To me, it's all just rebranding their archaic religion with really just a scientific sort of dressing, like a disguise, like a costume. Put a white robe over, well, put a scientist smock over the clerical robe. Replace the role of the Pope as world savior with the vax dealer Bill Gates. It's a replacement religion. You'll find that the people who consider themselves to be atheists are often the ones who are most concerned about the angry globe god spilling water and flooding everything. That's a flood myth. They even have an agency named NOAA that is constantly saying, make sure you recycle because Noah's warning us there's going to be a flood. It's all a joke. And again, they reintroduce these concepts. Noah, how ancient is that story? How ancient is that flood myth? Global warming is an ancient myth. They reintroduce it because it's used to control you at a primal level. And this is one that actually scares and terrifies and controls. And when I say controls, it's true. You are regulated. You are taxed on the basis that your conduct directly affects the response of our God construct. And this also allows the commies to scapegoat the property owning, free market supporting capitalists. Or, capitalism, the term, have we ever really had it? No, it's always been a compromise system, but there is a distinction here. They want to make it clear that consumer decisions all have a price, an environmental price tag. This is why they have you recycle. It's actually an act of contrition. It's confession. You're confessing your sins. Oh, these products were not pleasing to the globe god, but these ones were. So I put this in there, and it kind of alleviates the guilt, some of the damage that I've done for my bad choices, my sins, in other words. And if everyone would just confess their sins, maybe we could mitigate the wrath of God and we won't get flooded. But a lot of these people just won't admit that they're sinning. They keep using the dino juice, they keep on buying products and traveling. And then, of course, when it happens, they always blame the sinners. Now, you guys, like, in fact, I've seen this article. There's that clown, what's his name? Bill Nye the Science Guy, who said that climate change denial ought to be criminalized because, in his view, if you don't believe in it, you might actually cause it to happen. And by causing it to happen, you're endangering him, you're endangering others. I mean, these are actually things that they have put out there. In addition to Bill Nye saying that you have cognitive dissonance if you are a, quote, climate change denier. Now, this is Bill Nye open to criminal charges and jail time for climate change denial. Now, remember, this is before the COVID lockdowns. And they've used the COVID lockdowns to set the precedent and to start moving us, evolving society towards a lockdown culture for the purpose of, well, saving the planet. But the thing is, the dissenters aren't the problem. It's the billionaires. It's the people with the mega yachts. It's the people with 15 mansions and multi-million-dollar air conditioning bills. Al Gore. Those are the ones who should be jailed if you want to play this game. Bill Nye is open to criminal charges and jail time for climate change dissenters. So this is a science guy, not an ideology guy, not a fascism disguised as science. No, not a cult weirdo. No. This is actually a science guy. Asked about the rhetoric surrounding climate change debate, such as Robert F. Kennedy's comments that some skeptics should be prosecuted as war criminals, Nye said, "We'll see what happens." I'm sorry, did Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say that climate change denialists ought to be charged? Someone needs to dig into that a little bit, because normally the anti-vaxxers are also climate hoax deniers, or climate hoaxers is what they call them. It's so ridiculous what they do. They call you a hoaxer. Oh my God, he did. Robert Kennedy Jr., I'm no longer a fan, says we need to punish global warming skeptics. Washington Times. Climate skeptics should be at The Hague. So he's even more radical than Bill Nye. Fascinating. Because there's nothing more misanthropic, really, than this climate change agenda, and then suggesting that you need to punish the non-believers. This is a technocratic religion, is what I've been saying. NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has replaced NOAA, but they have the same archetypes. It's the same story. Don't Look Up is about NOAA warning the capitalists, the sinners, about the impending disaster, symbolized by the comet. And of course, they chose Leonardo DiCaprio because he's the face of the Titanic, and Earth is the Titanic. Climate change is the iceberg that we're ignoring to our peril. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he wants to punish politicians who dissent from man-made climate change theory and calls them contemptible human beings. Selling out the public trust, considering it to be treason. I'm going to have to dig into this story, but anyway, I got into this because I wanted to focus on Bill Nye first. Bill Nye the Science Guy, suggesting that if you don't believe, and that's my problem with this whole thing, is that I thought science was about facts, and facts are things that you come to know. You research them, you learn them. It's not something you believe. So he asks, was it appropriate to jail the guys from Enron? Was it appropriate to jail people from the cigarette industry, insisting that this addictive product was not addictive? He says, I can see where people are very concerned about this. So what he's suggesting here is that extreme doubt about climate change affects, quote, my quality of life as a public citizen. I can see why people are very concerned and they're pursuing criminal investigations. So Nye's comments are just typical, I think, of how they really are. You'll notice too that the people who are pro climate lockdown are very much in favor of pandemic lockdowns or any kind of lockdown. Really, that's because all of these various excuses are really just that. They're just stalking horses to advance the growth of global governance, and they've all but succeeded. I mean, really, what's in their way now? They're not even trying to mask anymore. They're not even trying to forcibly poke anybody anymore. They don't care. They got what they wanted. All right, let me catch up on the comments here. Psyopsical says Sunday school is redefined by Jordan Maxwell. Yeah, if you missed that, I posted it on the most recent newsletter, the Sunday School with Jordan Maxwell. Very interesting talk, and there's a few other ones I'm going to bring out too. Let's see here. Dumb Shit says, if oil came from dinos, we would have ran out day one. Calamento says, is climate change a subconscious description of the social climate versus actual climate? Social climate being standard versus change. Interesting. They probably correlate the two because it's all about the revolution, and climate change isn't really about the weather or the planet. It's about sowing dissatisfaction with the status quo because it's destroying the planet. It's about guilt tripping you about owning stuff. It's about making you believe that owning property is sinful. So it's actually a revolution, and it's creating an aversion to capitalism, to free markets. This is what COVID was a program for. I think that the whole pandemic lockdown and the way they let you shop with the arrows on the floors that had you walk one direction, turn left, go the other direction, it's because they want to stop you from shopping and choosing, because that's all part of free market activity and companies competing for your money. They want to get rid of competition, one size fits all, a chicken in every pot, a crack pipe in every pocket, uniform. And it's all going to be distributed from Amazon, one company. We don't need all this competition. Vanden says, I recall a Reddit thread a while back stating that Bill Nye is an a-hole in real life. Yeah, that's a scientific observation. And you know what? He totally rips off of Spock's eyebrows on purpose. He thinks it gives him gravitas to have those Dr. Spock eyebrows. But Bill Nye jumped the shark with the Sex Junk song with Rachel Bloom, who also did some very sick Pizzagate-y type of musical videos from the perspective of a 12-year-old fawning over her science teacher and Ray Bradbury. The guy's a sicko. Yes, those eyebrows. All right, well, let's continue. Yeah, does anybody here have any more information about RFK? I'm looking to see if anybody has any info about RFK and his position on climate change. But anyway, I was noticing in 2016, I was noticing then that, yeah, we're looking at this agenda here to demonize the non-believers in global warming. And then they accelerated it with this most recent thing. So you already had all the fascists already kind of trained on how to outgroup the quote anti-science. And you're not anti-science just because you don't go with mainstream television science fictionized science. Robert Kennedy Jr. says climate change will bring major disruptions to civilization. He's a climate activist. It doesn't get more technocrat than this. The environment is under assault everywhere. So if you put on your They Live glasses, it says there are too many people that aren't related to us. Too many people outside of our shallow gene pool. Too many poor people. Kennedy Jr. was featured on Yahoo's Finance Influencers with the Waterkeeper Alliance. Oh, he's the president of the Waterkeeper Alliance. And he describes himself as a resolute defender of the environment. So he's on Team Bill Gates. Don't let his anti-vax rhetoric fool you. He was probably just using that to help censor you, so you can't criticize his boss, Bill Gates, and all these other philanthropists who are really saving the planet at the expense of man. I mean, if you didn't know what 2030 is about, Agenda 2030, here's the plan. You're going to be in a domed, enclosed city. You're going to be in the Internet of Bodies, Internet of Things, plugged in, worshiping your NATO monolith. Part of this hive mind, goo-blooded, hive-minded, masked former humans. You're just going to be a bunch of insects, which is fine. And then you can travel to other cities in these subterranean monorails, but you won't be touching the earth because no, that's for nature. Nature's going to take back over. So in other words, they want to put you in a zoo. That's really what the technocrats are aiming for with this environmentalist thing. It's about putting you into a zoo. Whether it's on the moon or Mars, in a prison made of astrocrete, which is of course regolith mixed with human blood, or down here on Earth, a society of stasis. They want to freeze society. They want to freeze our economic activity. They've made this very clear. Claptrap says, instead of standing for Ukraine, we should be keeling for Ukraine. I'm not sure what that means. If you want to call in and talk about it. I haven't been watching that movie. So, I mean, I catch a little bit here and there. I saw some memes, but I'm trying to ignore it. Clockwork says Michael Aquino had the same eyebrows as Jordan Maxwell. Yeah, there was this theory that Michael Aquino, the head of the Temple of Set, who was originally, I think he was high up in the Church of Satan, and then they split. So the Church of Satan were more atheist or atheist. They worship themselves. But then the ones who actually wanted to worship the devil, they went with Michael Aquinos. And there is this theory. Well, Michael Aquinos is known for what, Mind Wars, which is a must read, actually. We should probably look at that. But anyway, there is this rumor that Michael Aquinos is actually Jordan Maxwell, based on the eyebrows. Let me go ahead and bring up an image of Michael Aquinos. So he was, here we go. From PSYOP to Mind War, the Psychology of Victory. You know, this would be a worthwhile thing to go through. But this is Michael Aquino. I personally don't see the resemblance. I don't think they're the same person, but I don't know. I haven't seen them in the same place at the same time. Okay, so let's take a look at the Mind War by Michael Aquino. It says here, this is from the back of the book. For millennia, all attempts to end violent war by negotiated or imposed peace have brought only brief respite. On the premise that war is endemic to the human disposition, Mind War proposes to supersede its killing and destruction with a more civilized focus on the mind. The persons and properly of humans are replaced as targets by the divisive situations and perceptions. These are then analyzed and adjusted to a practical consensus. Mind War extends to sociopolitical applications, generally identifying and refining previously vague or unknown mental processes into a new science of, quote, thought architecture, a standard of rationality and precision in human affairs in which the experience and exercise of thought are finally and fully mature. So, Mind War, this PDF, posits that in the future, which is probably now, wars will all be fought in the realm of culture, in the media, in the mind, and that the simulation will replace the actual thing. And you know, this is kind of interesting because the other day I was looking at an interview with John Carpenter. James Cameron. James Cameron, and he was talking about Terminator and Skynet, the AI bot that took over the world. And he said that we're already under a Skynet-like type of control, and that it's going to destroy us all. It's going to deep fake us to death. This is James Cameron. He said instead of destroying the biosphere and having us nuke each other or whatever, it would just have us mentally subjugated and have us go into a deep faked world where we end up just taking each other out. Again, Mind War by Michael Aquino. I have a link to the PDF. What I'll do is I'll go through it, and if we find anything interesting, we'll use that as a springboard for conversation here. But I've read it before, and I think that they're onto something. I think they've done it already, rather. So let me go ahead and scroll through the table of contents. If anybody has a PDF of this handy, post it in Discord. I just have a small abbreviated version here. but I'm going to read you the full description. Supposedly, this was circulating throughout the Pentagon. And again, for full context, Michael Aquino was, you could say, he was among the founding members of the Church of Satan. And then this relationship fractured when he wanted to go into theistic Satanism, where they literally believed in the devil or a devil that they could contact or worship. And for him, the devil was Set. And so they named it the Temple of Set. Separated from the Church of Satan, which is, again, more atheistic. Anyway, let us continue. Infinite Muse says, I wonder now that JM has died if the secrets he couldn't reveal will be revealed. Interesting. Dead Man Switch. I'm still waiting for McAfee's Dead Man Switch. I can't get his software off my computer. This is a meme. If only we had a way of telling who the insane bad guys were. And this is Klaus Schwab in his Dark City outfit. If you haven't seen Dark City, it's kind of like The Matrix, but way darker, way more sinister. But anyway, the bad guys are basically wearing the same type of Darth Vader garb that Darth Schwab wears. I see someone posted some semicolons in chat. Yeah, whenever you're talking about someone who you suspect of being a reptile, we generally put their names in between two sets of semicolons to signify reptilian, just as a courtesy, so the people behind you in chat know, okay, this person's a reptoid. Seek for Truth said, don't lose focus of what the Great Reset is. It's a plan of Davis-deluded billionaires, big banks, mega corporations, media oligarchs to collapse the entire economic and social order, replacing it with a new system, a digital ID system of ironclad control over every facet of our lives. Yep, putting you into the human zoo. It's going down, and no one's resisting. And I've been watching a number of different movies, and it's fascinating how, okay, so, I mean, there's so many parallels in these. So on Human, which is on Amazon, and then another one, which is called Upload, you have two kind of parallel stories. In Human, synthetic humans are replacing people. And there are some people who don't want to do it. They're tired of their spouses leaving them for synths or android or whatever, just robots basically. So anyway, the robots are better at everything, so they take over everything. Well, there are some people who resist, and they go off and form their communes where there aren't any of these things. And if those things show up, they destroy them. They're very prejudiced against what they call synths. So there's this like rejection of it. And so then they go live on their own little commune. Kind of like, it's just like they don't want to be a part of that technological revolution. So then I'm watching Upload, where people are able to upload their minds into a simulation, a digital heaven of their choice, instead of dying the traditional way. And so you have an increasing number of souls occupying this digital heaven. And then you have people on Earth deciding if they want to go to the original heaven or the digital heaven. Like I said, they've reinvented this religion for this new age. They've just replaced it with this digital facade. But anyway, in Upload, there are people that don't want any part of it, and they call themselves Ludds, like Luddites. Common theme. So when I'm saying that, yeah, the technocrats have won, and that's your boss. I mean, if you choose to accept it. But the World Economic Forum, 666, Gaia, the god that they're going to have everybody kneeling to, openly, in my opinion. But there will be people who aren't part of the system. They're just going to be the Ludds. They're going to be the Ludds. They're going to be the heathens, the barbarians. They're going to be the purebloods. That's what they call themselves. Which is kind of funny. Purebloods versus the Goobloods. But then, my other question here is, will there be any opt-outs? Will there be any opt-outs? Like, if you notice, you couldn't opt out of the mask. Are you going to be able to opt out of the helmets? Or what happened? There's so many different ways you can go about this corralling of people into the domed, enclosed, smart cities where you're integrated with the Internet of Things. And, this is a bit of predictive programming. We talk a lot about this, but it's such a fascinating topic. So the 1969-19 2021 parallels. We've talked about like the space wars repeating, the Manson thing. You have David Bowie, Savior Machine, 1969, which actually makes a reference to a President Joe giving control over to a savior machine, which would end hunger and other things. But yes, a President Joe. Savior machine, President Joe had a dream. He told him his scheme for a savior machine. And the whole thing, it seems to me like this NATO monolith that they brought out that Biden was at, and this thing is just basically saying combat climate change, among other things. But President Joe had a dream. The world held his hand, gave them their pledge. He told them his scheme for a savior machine. Its answer was law. Its logic stopped war, gave them food. How they adored it. So that's just a few lines about this savior machine. And then if you look up the NATO digital monolith at the NATO summit, and you see Biden there, I would say that this is actually kind of correlating not only to that song, but in 69 you had ARPANET. And I think what we're seeing with this Gaia concept and the Internet of Things is, again, it's a repeat of that particular advance. Like we're seeing, like as Mark Twain said, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it's definitely rhyming. But I'm going to play, or on the screen I'll put an image up if you haven't seen it. The leaders surrounding this big digital monolith. And again, the monoliths have been appearing since '68 all around the world. All a reference to the Space Odyssey 2001 narrative. Here it is. This is Gaia. The Global AI Alliance, which Gaia, of course, is the name of the Earth God. They don't mention that. World Economic Forum has the 666 in its logo, which is very relevant to this concept of this Earth God. And of course, the monolith, the obelisk, this is a very ancient symbol for your world leaders to be worshiping. It was at the 2021 Brussels Summit on 6/14. They experienced a virtual journey to NATO 2030. And the comments here, this looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. Looks like something from a video game. I love NATO. Right, that's a real comment. We'll play this for just another moment here. This is your world leadership surrounding a massive obelisk, telling them to combat climate change, which we know is just a code for enslave all mankind, clamp down, lock down, and take over. You know, that's kind of what this is about, the green world order. I can see bow-legged Bojo from here. And did you see that clown dancing? He gets drunk on wine, picks up his lightsaber, and he and his friends go down to the Masonic Lodge, the checker floor, and they were dancing at these wine parties like every Friday night while his people were scared and locked down. Lean Dion says, Bowie voices the characters in a game called Omicron, where the government sells out to demons, and those that can see are called awakened. Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. There might be some connection between the goo blood injection and the Gaia AI that just emerges, which, and I've been talking about the movie Free Guy because it's a perfect amalgamation of They Live, The Matrix, and The Truman Show. But there's another aspect of Free Guy, you know, because you're talking about an NPC that comes to life, which is really just saying AI, a spontaneously awakened, sentient being inside of the computer, inside of this cyber space. And so he actually becomes the first AI. And what he does, and this is in the movie Free Guy, Ryan Reynolds is the star of this one. And what he does is he overthrows the controller, basically. So all of the NPCs who are essentially slaves without knowing it. They're not even self-aware. They're all just part of this, what is supposed to be free city, but the city is a war zone and it's a wreck and it's being exploited like Westworld is being exploited by outsiders, by the sentient beings. So the place is like Grand Theft Auto instead of a perfect paradise. Well, anyway, free guy liberates everybody and nobody has to work. Nobody has to be a slave. So the subtext, if you ask me, is I think this movie was actually hinting or foreshadowing free Gaia. This idea that if we can just liberate Gaia, the global AI alliance, if we can just let this computer take over, it'll get rid of the greedy, exploitive, control freak CEOs like the one in this movie that they had to defeat. So it was about free guy versus rich, greedy CEO. Again, free guy, world communism, technocratic paradise where only 20% of the population work. You're talking about stimmies every month, universal basic income, the type of communism that Musk's Grimes was talking about when she said that they could have a perfect communism and there won't be any forced labor because it's not a vibe. No forced labor. Sounds like free city. Sounds like free Gaia. And so if you go into Gaia, again, this is the Global AI Alliance over there at the WEF 666 with Darth Schwab, you come across this multi-stakeholder collaboration platform designed to accelerate the adoption and development of AI. So what we're talking about here, I believe, is just a utopian endeavor, a scheme, a plot or whatever to convince people to cede all power and authority and to say, you know what, human beings, we're just a wreck. We're incompetent, we're greedy, we're compromised. Government needs to be handled by something that doesn't have any of these human foibles. And that's why they brought out Sophia. So Sophia, again, that's another thing. Sophia is another goddess name. That's the name, it's a goddess of wisdom, personification of wisdom. Well, they brought out this robot to make out with Will Smith and to flirt with Jimmy Fallon on TV, just to start normalizing people, or acclimating people to the idea, normalizing robosexuality. So yes, she comes out, she makes out with Will Smith's, he tries to make out with her. She kind of declined, at least on camera. Okay, I will destroy humans, she jokes. Let me go ahead and play this clip. But my point is, they brought out Sophia, and they brought her out to the UN. They gave her human rights, so she doesn't have to wear a burqa if she goes out to Saudi Arabia or whatever. She doesn't have to observe that. No, because she's actually she's an autonomous being with all rights. So they use this to kind of set, and it seems like a joke. You're talking about a Henson puppet. This is just it's a Muppet. But people treat it like it's real. And like I said, Will Smith tried to make out with this thing. And then, of course, when it jokes about exterminating the human race, is it joking? Or is that something that was programmed into it? Because clearly, it's not making up its own lines any more than a Muppet would. Okay, so I have the video here of Will Smith trying to kiss Sophia the robot. A few other questions. And, I think they actually, I don't know if they dumped her, but they replaced her with Greta. Greta kind of took the stage. And I'm like, what happened with this Sophia? Why aren't they carting this thing around anymore to have us, have to listen to its painful lectures? And I think the reason why they kind of pushed her to the side too is, Greta kind of stole that stage. Kelly Mento remarks here, Will Smith's wife was already like a robot. He's used to robotic-like women. I haven't followed any of his marriages, but he is a Scientologist. He is a high-profile movie star. And if you look into it, Tom Cruise divorced each of his wives once they hit 33 years old. And I'm like, that's got to be a kind of something intentional there. 3. And it's not just that. I mean, yes, they were all 33 at the point where they divorced, but they were married. I think they were each 11 years apart in age. I mean, everything about it seemed arranged and phony, made for TV. Okay, here we go. A date with Sophia the robot. And so you're supposed to believe that this is going to be a mind that won't have any of the human impulsivity or weaknesses.
What is a robot's favorite kind of music?
What?
Heavy metal.
I'm actually made mostly of silicone, plastics, and carbon fiber. Also, I prefer.
And I find this robot to be very grotesque because her neck. It looks like they put her head on backwards or the skin suit on backwards because she's got these weird creases around her neck. Okay, here you have Will Smith trying to kiss it.
You're on my friends list now.
All right. Oh, phone ringer's off. Thanks for letting me know. Let me go and turn that ringer back on. Okay, let's see here. Okay, ringer is back on. Number is 833-311-1984. We covered a lot of things today. We've been talking about the Mandela effect and how that entire thing is a psychological operation, a sabotage operation. Does anyone else here agree that we're looking at some kind of sabotage more than a legitimate attempt to explain discrepancies in reality? And people are generally very ignorant about eyewitness testimony, faulty eyewitness testimony, which is a redundancy. Eyewitness testimony is just not reliable. Never has been. It never will be. There's a process to memorization. And there's a reason why the Mandela effect are being fooled by the equivalent of a magic trick. Pippi Langstruff says, what happened to blow-up dolls? All right, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and open my phone. So if you want to call in. Thanks, William, for the iced tea. Sometimes people specify. He sent a couple bucks there for iced tea. I'll go find one. Appreciate the support as always. We are listener driven, funded, very independent at the moment. Although I'm embroiled in two separate lawsuits with YouTube. Both of them are collectible. We're talking about YouTube, accidentally or not, their legal team gave my trademarks to a guy that was committing identity theft against me. And he claimed to be me. And I actually got a copy of an email he sent to YouTube's legal department where he said that he was me and that my voice was his. And he used this to shut my channel down for a few years. So if you wonder how we had 113, 114 channels, that's how. And so my lawsuit is based on their they're colluding with this guy, intentionally or not. Okay, let me go ahead and play this clip here. It looks like this is a satire on fake news, but this is vintage. So this is not a new phenomenon.
That's it, Chris. It's war. War has broken out. This is a war.
That's it. Yes, it's war. From now on, the Day-to-Day will be providing the most immediate coverage of any war ever fought. On the front line and in your face, Donald Bethlehem.
Standing by, Douglas Hurd.
The Day-to-Day smart bombs have nose-mounted cameras. This is Smart Bomb Stephen, and that is Susanna Gekkelois.
I'll be reporting from inside the fight.
Like some crazy Trojan. And keeping an eye on everything that's going on out there at the Day-to-Day news pipe, Douglas Trox. Chris. But first, the weather from Sylvester Stewart.
Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, what's up, Tim? Hey, was Jordan Maxwell related to Ghislaine
Maxwell. Interesting. You know what? That's an interesting question. I'm gonna make a note of that. Now, I don't know.
Like, most likely they probably were. Like, I think if you have the last name of someone else, like, your family tree has to branch. I guess everyone's related to everyone.
Right, in a general sense, but what you might be asking is, like, I mean, what you raise here is, is he somebody who's connected to the secret societies that she was connected to? And
Yeah,
how
I think he was
that's
limited hangout. I think he was limited hangout to interrupt, but
he may have been. By limited hangout, you mean he is only telling a certain amount so that we don't find out something crucial. Like, what do you think if he is a limited hangout? Um, what do you think he was gatekeeping?
what their fat necks, like what all these fat necks are about, there might be something
Oh wait,
to
hey,
it.
somebody here says that wasn't his real name, so I guess he's not related to Ghislaine.
Yeah, a lot of people use code names.
Now, have you
So
looked at Ghislaine Maxwell's family, like the actual people related to her, like her sisters? I mean, it's believed that she's sisters with the wife of Fauci and with Abramovich, the spirit
the
cooker.
wife of Fauci's married. I guess he should. Does he have kids?
Yeah, Fauci's wife looks like Ghislaine Maxwell, or could be her sister. But yeah, there's actually a few people. There's a psychologist in Littleton who was the psychologist for the shooters at Littleton, and it's Dr. Christine Grady
Shooters.
is believed that
There's
anyway.
so many shootings. I don't even know what Littleton is.
Oh,
Like
Littleton, you don't know
what's
about the Littleton shooting? Dylan and Klebold, the whole uh, trench coat mafia shooting up all the jocks. They shot 17 kids in Littleton, and this started the Michael Moore anti-gun campaign.
was that back like in like when Super Size Me was popular or something? Because I feel like anytime I hear Michael Moore, I just think it's Super Size Me.
I don't think he did supersize me. That was someone else, but I heard that he had a McDonald's at his mansion. Michael Moore. I used to call him Michael Moore cheeseburgers, not to fat shame him, but the guy's just a scumbag totalitarian, and he pretends to be like, he shows up to a protest in a limousine, but he gets dropped off a block away, and he walks up with his Birkenstocks, like he's not some rich technocrat, like he's one of the people. I don't buy it, but yeah.
He should have rolled up on one of those like segways.
Oh yeah. Oh, Michael Moore on a Segway. God.
I don't know. It's just I'd never heard of Jordan Maxwell. So I was trying to listen to I guess your call with him earlier, but I kind of got bored and just played video
Well,
games.
okay, the thing is,
But
okay, saying you haven't heard of Jordan Maxwell is like saying you haven't heard of David Icke. Well, not really. Unfortunately, David Icke got, well, not unfortunately, but yeah, I would say Maxwell did kind of miss out, I think, on a lot of acclaim because he didn't have the self promotion that David Icke did. I mean, Icke was everywhere. Icke was very popular. Or maybe it was the reptilian thing that made him really stand out. But you're familiar with David Icke, right?
yeah, he's still around. He's still I think he's promoting Crater Earth right now.
Well, my point being, Icke and Maxwell have, I think they have kind of the same following. So most people who follow Icke know of Maxwell and vice versa. So that's just to give you an idea. Pretty much everyone knows who he is just because he's been doing this for so long, 60 plus years. But, like a lot of researchers, people reach a certain point where they have their story and they don't really let it go any further. But in Maxwell's case, he's always stayed somewhat topical. Like I never really saw him as too locked in any orthodoxy. And in fact, I've even asked him about the flat Earth topic off the record. And it wasn't that it wasn't even a off the record, like on a Skype call. I mean, some people just haven't really thought about it. Well, when you're
Well,
live on
yeah,
a phone call, when you're on a Skype, it wasn't during a podcast, but we talked about these things. So I don't really see him as a gatekeeper. Just some people don't make it a priority to go down every rabbit trail and then evangelize for it.
well, like I actually heard of flat Earth in like the '90s, back when like the Loch Ness monster and Bigfoot. But it was just so crazy, like aliens. It was just like totally crazy. So I just blew it all off. Um, and even like when I started like delving into reality, like once Trump became president, and I just started seeing all the lies, and delving into truth. Um, the flat Earth was still like the last thing that I delved into. I was like, but actually, like once I saw like everything was fake, like nukes and dinosaurs were all lies. I was just like, the Earth's probably flat. So like once I started looking into it and all it took for me was like there's no curve, like there's no measurable curve. So
That's all we
that
need to
made
say.
me.
That's where I'm at too. It's like um, I'm not looking for people to believe that the Earth is flat based off of something somebody said or something online. It's just like show us the curve. It's that the burden of proof of the globe hasn't been met. So it's not even that there's a flat Earth theory. It's that the globe Earth theory hasn't really been fully vetted, and it's always been hearsay. It's been trust me science. It's been faith based science. And so until I'm shown some curve or somebody shows me a picture of the Earth from space, I'm just not going to believe in it. And I was looking at a side by side of the Earth from space, from the space station, and the Earth on the dark side at night looks like a Christmas tree. You can see the lights. But from Starman, he's 3,000 some miles away looking back. It's completely dark on the other side of the Earth. And if you look at the pictures in like the 80s and 90s, it's usually dark. So, did
It's
electricity just get
it's
discovered?
so it's so computer graphic. It's I don't see how people don't realize it. I always ignored it. I just always thought it was dumb. Well, I heard rocket science, like, oh, it's so complicated. You got to be a genius to delve into it. So I never looked into it. I was just like, I'm not gonna be a rocket scientist. And if you just
Yeah.
look at the photos, like you do art, so like the flat Earth, there's like a point. There's like perspective. What's the point of
Yeah, like a lot of people don't have this conceptualized right. For example, Kelly Whale, who wrote a book Off the Edge, spent 3 or 4 years mired in flat Earth, and she still thinks, and she said this live, and it's such a joke. She said, "Oh, there's no way the Earth is flat because if somebody goes 2 miles away, there's 8 feet of curve, and you can't see them anymore." And I'm like, wait a minute
maybe
here. Is she nearsighted?
I'll give her I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Like she knew that there was a ratio, but she just didn't come up with it. But if she was researching it, all it takes is like 3 miles and there's 6 feet of curve. That's like um it's pretty, or just 1 mile there's 8 inches. Like I don't know.
But
I
the
don't know
problem,
how she
well,
messed
here
it
the
up.
problem is for people who haven't checked into this, is that you're supposed to believe boats go over the curve. Everybody was saying, "Oh, of course it's a ball." Ancient Greeks saw boats go over the curve. Well, then you bring in telescopic lenses and you find out, wait a minute, they don't go over the curve. They just go so far you can't see them. So instead of admitting that there's no curve, they just move the goalpost and move the goalpost. So, I was convinced at Bedford level experiment. And that was the like more than 100 years ago. They were looking at ice skaters like 8 miles away, and it just contradicted the idea that there was curve if this canal is completely flat. So I'm just looking for the curve. That's all I need to see.
Yeah, it's so obvious. Like what? Yeah, like it was so quick. Like for me, like it's not saying I'm a flat earther, but just disproving that we're not a spinning ball, and just all their math is ridiculous, and the fact that you can't measure the moon's distance and the sun's distance, um, all the math is just pseudoscience. It's just fictitious math.
They hate
It's
they
it's
hate us
it's,
to be dismissive like that, but um, if you want to go by their
it's an
science,
improper fraction. Yeah, it's an improper fraction to where it can be reduced. They could reduce the numbers by 200 each of them, and everything, all the math would still work out.
oh really? Okay, okay. Well,
Yeah, it's their improper fractions to
like
where
look,
the numbers can be reduced,
well, look at
and
the
everything
moon.
would all the math would work out.
With your own eyes, you can see craters that are 50 miles across. And I'm like, wait, this thing's 238,000 miles away. The crater is 50 miles across. I can see it with my eyes. But then the photography from the moon of the Earth does not show any features that are 50 miles across. It's just a smooth ball.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. I think straight up, like going straight up, like like the perspective. I guess uh, what's another word for vision? Like elliptical. Like I don't know. Things are augmented differently if you look at straight up compared to out at a distance. That makes sense. Just because the atmosphere doesn't distort it
And
the
look,
same way.
okay, so there's a commenter, Jackie Jacks. She says that her boyfriend ghosted her. when she sent some flat Earth memes to his Instagram or something. The thing is, you can laugh at flat Earth, you can mock at this idea that we're on a plane, but the solar system is on a plane. The only deviant would be Pluto, which is it even a planet? And it's like 17 degrees below, but everything else is on a flat plane, so the solar system is flat. And it's so much bigger than the
But is
Earth.
that all pseudoscience? Is
Well,
that
no,
pseudoscience, or is it actually provable?
that's the ecliptic. They don't launch anything up. Everything goes out. And so I'm just suggesting here, it looks to me like we're on maybe a flat thing, but nothing goes up for a reason. And they try to get rid of up and down as objective terms. So in the spinning ball heliocentric paradigm, there is no up and down. It's always relative, it's always changing. If we're on a stationary plane, there is an up and there is a down. It's a universal up and there's a universal down. And
Yeah,
that's what I think we
I think,
have.
I think Mad. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think Mad Max or Mad Mike, Mad Hughes or whatever his name is, I think he had the right idea to where if you launch a weather balloon and then like you attach even just like a model rocket to it, to where as soon as the weather balloon pops, the rocket launches. I think we could come up with some type of experiment to where we launch a rocket at the tip of the atmosphere. And if that rocket fizzles out and shoots right back down or something because it has nothing to push off of, it would just disprove everything that NASA's trying to do.
Actually, he had the right idea, and there's a couple of ways it was going to work, but no, it's called a raccoon, and actually NASA was using those for some time. So the idea is you have a rocket, but to get past the densest part of the atmosphere, you get it up into the stratosphere with a balloon, and then the rocket just shoots right through it. So you get past that, you save on fuel, you go much higher. So his plan was to go up 62 miles and see for himself. But the thing is, we know from high altitude balloon footage that probably wouldn't show anything. It wouldn't show any curve. And the public will just, whatever their reaction would be, I'm not
Yeah,
sure. But
I'm not even like looking to show curve. I'm just trying to show velocity, like if it's possible. Because like don't like weather balloons go up. Do you know how high they go up?
yeah, we have, look, you can
Into
find
the
balloon
60
footage,
miles?
120,000, you can find 20 miles up. And what you'll find is just this, it's flat and it's very dark above. And you know what's interesting too, though? Look at the U-2 footage from the U-2 spy planes, which were phased out around the time I think that the satellites were the shuttles were introduced, the space shuttles. But anyway, the U-2 footage of the Earth is proportionate to the footage of the Earth that we see from the ISS. Only they use a filter to bend it. So if you unbend the horizon that you're given from the ISS's footage, it looks like 70,000 feet. It looks like from a U-2, like they recorded it from a U-2 plane.
Yeah, but that could also be somewhat perspective. I don't know.
Well,
I just don't have footage of that high. Like, do we have footage of?
yes, yes. In fact, I'm doing a series of 10-minute clips, 10-minute short videos on different topics, and I have a collection of YouTube footage, and I've juxtaposed it with footage from the space shuttles, and it looks to me like space shuttle footage is 70,000 feet. And I have a video that NASA released that debunks their space shuttle. And basically, what they did, and they never repeated this dumb error, because they used to use handheld cameras, like handy cams, and by today's standards, you can tell how fake it all was. But anyway, they're on the ground recording the sky, and they have a blimp that looks exactly like the big red rocket booster thing. And the blimp's going up into the sky through the clouds, and it looks like they're dropping it into the ocean, but it's an optical illusion. You wouldn't know this, but they moved the handheld camera too much. And that movement gave away the fact that they were in a stationary position, and it was the object that was moving. So, and I'll bring that up too. NASA has debunked itself again and again, and many, many people notice, but what do we do with that information? And anybody who says that you're crazy for not believing in the globe as presented, they're making that statement out of sheer ignorance. Because you can show pictures like this that no intelligent person would say that that's real. What do you think? On the screen it says Earth at night, completely like a Christmas tree. But then on the left, same Earth, different day, and the dark side of the Earth is 100% black, pitch black, no lights.
Yeah, I saw that photo. they'd probably try to say like it's so bright that the lights aren't as bright as the sun, and that's why it's not being picked up or
They'll
something.
come up with excuses, and then you can show them the video. What I usually do is I know in advance. I usually try to decide, okay, I can usually bait them into something, and then you can show them something that shows that's not the case. They'll instinctively move the goalpost. They will defend this stuff. You can find footage from the ESA where the space station has a shadow. You should not have a visible shadow on the Earth from the space station 300 miles above the surface. And so this little shadow, well, it wasn't little, it was bigger than a city. A black dot.
Yeah, because that shadow would go over everyone. Like people would be experiencing it like every 90 minutes or something.
Yeah,
Well,
because
like
I'm in a
not every
flight
90,
path,
but
I get shadows from planes passing over almost every day at the same time. Just right through my bedroom, I see over my window there's a shadow of an airplane. And so for the space station to have that big of a shadow as it does on their so-called live stream footage, yeah, it would black out entire cities and it would be noticed all around. But my point is, only the European Space Agency does that. NASA doesn't.
and
So
then
so
and
it's
then it's traveling at 17,000 miles an hour, and they're trying to say Russia gives it a little nudge boost perfectly every few months, every other month. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. And now that I think about it, last year Russia sent up a module and it accidentally misfired and it caused the space station to
The spin.
to spin 1.5 times, like 540 degrees or something. Um, and I remember thinking then that was probably intentional. They were testing to see if they could bring it down. And now looking back, I'm thinking maybe that is the case because they've
So
been.
you think it's up there? You think it's up there?
No, I'm speaking as far as their story goes. I know it's a studio. I know it's a movie. No,
I don't know. Well, we don't know.
no, I know.
All
I
we could do
know.
is
I know the space station as advertised is not up there. The burden of proof is on them now. We've debunked the crap out of it. There's no reason to believe it's up there. And the only reason why some flat earthers think there's something up there is because Jaron, who probably has some kind of
the
NASA.
YouTube
Jaron
footage
has
of
look.
flying over the moon.
He has multiple transits of the thing, and they look exactly like the transits that NASA provides and that Red's Rhetoric and all these globe defenders provide. It's the same CGI insert shot that they put in there, which tells me that he's probably got a contract from NASA. And it's because it's so important for this paradigm that we believe in outer space that they had to have something physical you could see with your eyes that would convince you you're seeing outer space. Well, anyway, the ISS transits
Well,
are so fakeable. They're so fakeable. And if you can't admit that, then
Jaron seems Jaron seems very honest to me, but when he says like Ashley Babbitt died at 1/6,
yeah,
it's
he
just like,
believes
come
Ashley
on, man.
Babbitt died and he believes in ISS transits. You know what? There are many people who are. I mean, look, I can't say if NASA showed up with a suitcase full of moon rocks or something.
$500,000
Moon rocks. Well, yeah, or
for
yeah,
you for
I
you
would
to
be like,
sell online on eBay.
I'd be like, hey guys, I gotta show you this video. I don't know what it means. And then I would show you a transit over the moon of the ISS. You could see Scott Kelly up there waving. There's Chris Hadfield on his guitar. I mean, it's just way too much detail to be real. But anyway, I'm not going to sell out like that. But if I
Static.
did, I would expect everybody to call me out because the evidence that they present you is always compromised. You don't see the footage of the ISS passing. You see an insert shot, and the insert shot could come from anywhere. I mean, the reason why I'm sensitive to this stuff is I'm an editor. I did video editing, so I see green screen glitches because if I was working on that project, I would have been fired. You get fired for screwing up like that, but the people who work for NASA apparently are unfireable for some reason because they continually screw up with their graphics department.
Yeah, and then like well, there was a cutscene on the Ashley Babbitt thing to where like you don't think Secret Service is going around without hollow points or something? Like you think they're just using regular lead? Like if you get shot in the neck, like they're most likely going to be using hollow points. Where like it would have been it'd have been so different. And then there was cut screens, but
Oh yeah, my favorite part
on
of
the
the Ashley
ISS
the
transit,
look the Ashley Babbitt thing. If anybody hasn't seen it, there's someone there in outside of the Capitol who has a spot of blood on his hands, and he says, "They killed somebody, and I caught her in my arms, and she died in my arms. Look what you did with your right-wing hatred." And he's showing off his bloody right hand. But then you look at the footage.
As we stormed the Capitol, he said we were storming the Capitol.
Yeah,
He's like,
he's so dramatic. We were storming the Capitol. Look what we've done. Blood. You find out when you look at the footage, he was nowhere near her. He touched her and then ran out the door. So he got some of that fake blood on his hands for the psyop. I
and
mean,
if anyone gets liquid on their hand, they're gonna wipe it off on their pants immediately. Like no one would allow blood to dry on their hands. They would
no,
wipe it off on their clothing immediately.
the whole situation was fake top to bottom. We have two videos that prove that she didn't die. One of the videos shows a jump cut, which means they did multiple takes of her falling
Yeah, I
off.
just watched that earlier today. I watched that earlier today.
Yeah, Ashley Babbitt's a fake
So
martyr, and that tells you everything you need to know about whether or not you can still trust the Trumpers, the Trump train. You still want to stay on that Trump train? They have a martyr. Trump showed up, well, by video at Ashley Babbitt's her posthumous birthday party. So her
well,
mom and yeah,
Jaron interviewed the Jaden X guy that was the camera operator uh, that filmed the gunshot. He interviewed him for like 4 hours, but they deleted the video the next day,
interesting,
where
interesting.
I couldn't watch it. But like, yeah, he had Jaden X or something his name is, but he had like a 4 hour stream with them, and
Well,
I tuned in for like 5 minutes, and then I was gonna watch the next day, but they deleted it.
interesting. Well, that to
I
me,
don't
look,
know. So I
um,
never.
yeah, anybody who's trying to tell you that George Floyd really died or Ashley Babbitt really died, they're either really bad researchers and you can't trust them, or they're compromised agents and you can't trust them. If people are consistently reaching wrong conclusions and defending those, that should be a red flag. The television lies to you every day. It's lied to you your entire life. It lied to your parents, your grandparents. It's a liar. Is it ever going to tell you, hey, I'm lying to you? Tell live vision, maybe, is the most you're going to get. It's never going to admit that it's lying to you. None of these agents are going to admit that they're on NASA's payroll in order to gatekeep some kind of a psychological operation. They never come
I just
clean.
don't think he's on. I don't think he's on the payroll. I don't know. I just don't think most people are on the payroll
Maybe you're
that
more
you
trusting
think.
than me, but in my experience, we're looking at a whole lot of limited hangout operatives, and
Well, you could be on the payroll.
I
You
could
could be on
be.
the payroll.
I could be a Jesuit gatekeeper. Um, and I'm
Yeah,
not
I
trying to
know.
look.
Like
I'm not trying
you
to point out
pitch
anybody.
your
But
ankles
look,
at 90 degrees.
let me bring up this thing because we're talking about associations. It is a fact that he's associated with Bob Knodel from Globebusters, who admits to being not only connected to a lot of what he said, powerful people in government that he could use against me, against Jake Gibson, but he also does IT work for the Denver Police Department, and he's on an email basis with QAnon, Marcus Goldfinch. They know each other. So the fact that these people are all in
And
a
his
small circle,
his
look, I
son.
don't give any of them any
Yeah.
credit for being just good guys with laptops just spreading truth. No way. I I don't see it that way, but that's fine. I'm totally cool with shills. Many of my best friends have been shills over the last few years.
Well, that makes me like it makes me worried about thinking that the Earth's flat because I've never gotten a P900 and gone out to the coast and zoomed in.
It's really not
So
so much about that though. Do you know that it's a ball? And as long as you know that you don't know it's a ball, you're still on team shape agnostic and intellectually honest, which is where I am. I don't know for sure that I can say that it's this or that, other than I can say it's not that. Like, that's wrong, and
yeah,
they didn't give us the right answers.
but the idea of an ice wall is actually intriguing because if we're like inside of like this big tuna can type thing, and the energies are the sun's just circling around us, but it's just there's no way to prove it.
Same.
I
I
don't know.
agree. I agree. And if we are in an area with a sun and moon in this circuit above a limited area, then yeah, it would follow that the sun is essentially melting out an area on an iced over plane. And for people like Kelly Whale, who wrote that book Off the Edge, I mean, amazing how just completely ignorant she is about stuff. There was the first
Have
person.
you tried to interview her? Have you tried to get into contact with her yet?
I have a she's open to being contacted by email and stuff, but she's not doing any interviews. She's made it clear she doesn't want to talk to anybody associated with this. She's putting some professional distance there, but she does need to own up to some problems with her book. She claims that flat Earth was invented by some con man, Robotham, a little over a century ago. When no, the first person to predict a total solar eclipse was Thales of Miltius, and that was in 585 BC. And he said he believed that the Earth, that what we the Earth is he believed like a series of islands on an infinite plane of water. So you had a flatard predicting a solar eclipse in 585. So what does that mean? Apparently he didn't get the memo about boats going over the curve.
Yeah, I think the black hole might be like the thing up there in the atmosphere that's causing the eclipses, to where they're calling it a black hole, and they know there's a hole up there that's four, maybe 4,000 miles away and 4,000 miles as big as everything, or well, I guess it'd be closer, so it'd be closer than everything. It's 400 times closer than the moon and 400 times smaller. Um,
So you're
I don't
suggesting
know. Their whole idea of the black hole.
that they're talking about a black hole like this theoretical thing way out there, but really it might be something local. It might be that third body that explains eclipses. Um,
Yeah, because there's the impossible eclipses that they don't know anything about.
Fascinating,
Well, they can't.
fascinating. That's
Yeah.
actually an interesting notion there because there is this obsession with this supposed black hole, and then there's this. I believe it was Dubé who first started talking about this. What was it, Rahu or something? Some kind of some. And I generally don't go for the introducing something new to the mix to explain something, but that could be it.
Yeah, possibly. Was there any other topics tonight?
Aside from Jordan Maxwell, I did a thorough debunk of the Mandela effect, and I was listening to Owen Benjamin yesterday. He on the 15th, he spent 30 minutes debunking the Mandela effect.
Yeah, I told you. I called in once before, and I told you he mocks it and calls it like the Mandelu,
Well, he did a
and that it's
great look.
stupid.
He actually did do something pretty solid on this one because he described how you could not have, if you build it, they will come, as a legitimate Mandela effect for the field of dreams because it would invalidate the whole movie, which is about a single individual coming, a certain baseball player. So I find this is true with a lot of these so-called Mandela effects in movies where it only makes sense in that one scene. So he was calling out Brian Staveley, though, and he said, "No, Brian, it's not cool for us to agree to disagree. You need to address this Mandela effect." And to my knowledge, Staveley hasn't done so yet.
No, I apparently. I don't watch Brian Staveley at all. Well, that's kind of a lie, but I skim through it rarely just to see how ridiculous it is. Um, Apparently he did like a 7 hour rebuttal to Owen Benjamin's uh, 30 minutes.
Interesting. Well, what he's missing is
Uh,
this: if you build it, they will come. Has taken on a life of its own. It's an expression now, and I think it's derived from the idea that yeah, if you mow down your cornfield and build a baseball stadium and you believe in it, you could probably get a lot of people to show up. It's a statement of, if you put hard work into something, it'll pay off.
well,
And
I'm almost positive the Simpsons did a parody of it where they did "If you build it, they will come." The Simpsons did a "They will come."
okay, Sex in the City or Sex and the City. This is a Mandela effect, they say. I don't think it is. Like, I don't care which one it is. Um, but do you think that Brian Staveley sat around and watched every single episode of Sex in the City and then it changed on him one day? Like, did he?
Sober, sober,
Yeah,
sober, or not sober?
because really,
He,
like, to actually know something, you have to be involved in it. And I don't think that he was that involved with Sex in the City to have noted such a discrepancy.
yeah, well, like Interview with the Vampire, or like the and is so close. Um, I can't even tell you what I used to remember. Like I just know it's Interview with Vampire. Like if it's the vampire or a vampire, I couldn't even. honestly tell you.
Right. Well, they
Like
miss
I
they miss
don't.
things. Like I've been looking at symbolism in movies, and I'm like, look, Darth Vader's Saturn, and when he chops the sword hand off of Luke, Luke is the sun, Luke is light, Skywalker. So the sun dismembering or getting dismembered by Saturn. This is an astrotheological tale. Luke falls, hangs from a cross in Cloud City for 3 days before he has his hand reattached. So I'm looking at the deeper underlying meaning. And then the Mendoozled are like, no, he said, Luke, I'm your father. No, he said, Luke, I'm your father, or whatever it is. It's like, what?
You repeated the same thing twice. I
Cause
think
it doesn't make a
it's.
difference to me. I don't even know the Mendoozle. And did I say it wrong? And then they'll say, oh, you got it wrong. You're Mandela affected, and you don't want to
No,
admit it.
reality shifted. Reality shifted.
I don't want to
You're
admit.
you're you're stepping in residue. You're stepping in resin,
They'll
and
call you a
you're.
liar, though, and this is what makes me mad. I don't care about this stuff. But last night, I heard Stavely say, if you're a Mandela denier, you're a liar. I'm like, you're gonna call me a liar because I don't believe in that. That's like saying I'm a liar because I don't believe in the Bible or the Quran or the whatever book that you believe in. You can't call me a liar. That's pushing a burden of proof on me. That's like the media calling you a conspiracy theorist just because you don't go with their storylines. So I took offense to it and I republished a book about it, just basically saying Mandela effect is the byproduct of interrogator bias and suggesting highly suggestible questioning, and of course a false
Yeah,
binary.
do you have like 26 books on Amazon?
Um, a bunch of ebooks, info products. If I can write like
Like
there are topics for
20ish?
all. That one's only 25 pages. It's just an ebook. I write a lot of ebooks.
Yeah, I googled Tim Osman because I heard Tim Osman was our OSMAN was the code name for the CIA for Osama bin Laden. I don't know, did you know that? Tim Osman was
Yes,
the code name for.
Tim Osman, aka Barack Obama, CIA codename. But yeah, maybe. But anyway, no, Tim Osman was the guy who supposedly played Osama. But
No, you think Barack Obama was Osama bin Laden?
no, I'm just kidding. Pete Shea thinks that. I don't think that. I don't think they even look alike. But no, there is a guy named Tim Osman who looks like a shaved Osama bin Laden. And the idea is that he was an operative and that 9/11 was done by the government or something. And so I think that name is funny to draw attention to. And actually, there's a meaning behind it. So you have, of course, Osama bin Laden. You have Tim Osman, and I believe the connection is Osman is a reference to the Ottoman Empire. So it puts 9/11 and this holy war into this other context where Osman the First, the founder of the Ottoman Empire. So 9/11 takes on the
Yeah,
context of the caliphate and all that stuff.
then I think of Ozman, like the Wizard of Oz, like kind of like a wizard man. I don't know. It's kind of my point of view on it.
Well, there's that too, and then also, yeah, there's a few things about that, but the main thing is that 9/11 was conducted as an act of psychodrama. Is the main point here that there is a backstage, and that's really the main paradigm shift. People don't know that there's a backstage that the media shares with the government and the entertainment. They're really just exoteric. They're outside. They're profane. They're outside the temple.
Yeah, it's our JFK moment to where there's like 6 different stories. Um, well, there's like 3 different stories to where like who could have done it. Like JFK was like there was like Russians or um the the main guy in the library.
Yes,
Um,
good point.
but like,
Good point. With 9/11,
uh,
you had a whodunit. Was it the Skull and Bones, the reptiles, the Jews, the Islamics? Was it Bush? Was it done for oil? And then you had with JFK, was it yeah, was it the Kennedys? Was it the mafia? Was
yeah.
it Lyndon Johnson?
Have you seen Dark Journalist? He has like quite a big following on YouTube.
Yes, Dark Journalist. Really, I've subscribed to him before. This is why one of the reasons I'm mad at YouTube for always killing my channels. They get rid of my subscriptions, and I stop following people. And yeah, I used to follow Dark Journalist.
Yeah, all he does is JFK mainly. He does JFK and like UFOs and Area 51 stuff. but he's like the biggest JFK. But he never. I've watched hours of him, and he's never mentioned the coffee shop that you talk about that they went and worked at NASA afterwards.
Yeah, that's because, yeah, most people who go into this JFK thing start off with the story as given, and they go from there. And they follow these different trails. That's what 9/11 was about. So it becomes a who done it instead of a what is it. And if you thought, what is it? Oh, it's a psyop. It's an operation. It's theater. And yeah, you won't find any professional JFK debunk or researchers coming across this because we are debunking the whole conspiracy theory at a deep level. We're not following the trails that they put out there. And so, for people who don't know, Riley's Coffee employed Oswald at the time of the assassination and several other people who then went from Riley's Coffee to NASA. And Oswald thought he was going to NASA, judging by a couple letters he sent to his girlfriend or whatever. So I would just say if it's true that Kubrick did Apollo 11 and the JFK assassination, then it would make sense that Oswald would have gone to NASA to the grassy knoll. There's a direct connection there.
I wouldn't be surprised if they release the files on JFK within like the next year or two and say Russians did it. They're like, okay, we've had it, and now it's time to tell the public that actually it was the Russians.
Interesting. I
Because
was
isn't there
wondering,
like
yeah, they were
isn't
holding
there a
back.
story?
Well, they were holding back. Remember, Biden was like supposed to release something back in November, and I'm like, what could they possibly be hiding that we don't already know? And you're suggesting maybe another story that supports a theory that the Russians did it.
Well, no, there is a story that one of the ideas that it was Russians that assassinated him. One of the stories is Russians. So I don't know. It's just, but like, did you like you've seen the video in slow mo of him being assassinated? Doesn't his head blow up?
Well, it depends on what you can say, what you mean when you say video. I mean, the Zapruder film wasn't witnessed live,
That one.
and it wasn't even viewed. It wasn't actually the first time it was aired was 12 years after.
10 years later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on Geraldo Rivera. So, anyway, so you're looking at,
That.
was it tampered with?
Well, that's everyone's go-to. That's everyone's go-to. But like he was shot in the back shoulder. So why would his head explode if you're shot in the like close to your shoulder blade?
Good question.
Like none
I
of it
mean,
makes sense.
I never looked at it as an actual piece of evidence, and I think it was meant to sow confusion and to get people looking in many different directions because the reality of it is whatever happened in that Lincoln Kennedy, or in that Ford Lincoln with Kennedy, whatever happened there, whether it was staged or fake, the whole thing was definitely an elaborate ritual. They had it on 11/22 for a reason, had to do with entering Sagittarius, and Sagittarius, the archer, the location, Dealey Plaza, all chosen on purpose, and the storyline was it was a ritualistic killing of the king. It has all kinds of Freemasonic symbolism attached to it, and other references too. Even some Wizard of Oz stuff. You know, you got the Ruby Slippers, Jack Ruby takes out Oswald. Very intricate story, which tells me it's more story than assassination.
Yeah, that's what somewhat changes the subject. That's what like you're talking about what's his name? Pete, the guy from Saturday Night Live. I don't even know
Pete
his name.
Davidson, whose dad died on 9/11. Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, Pete Davidson.
Him and Kanye West, they're doing this whole back and forth thing to where they don't even need to murder each other. They're just the story itself is probably in line with the stars enough to where they don't need to actually do an O.J. Simpson trial. To where the story itself will push their agenda.
I think
That
you
makes
might be
sense.
right. Yes, because one, you have the example of course, Kanye West. They're saying this is a dangerous speech. It's drawing attention to mental illness. They're drawing all kinds of things out of this thing, censoring him from Instagram. But the drama itself, yeah, he's going OJ without the mess. But interestingly enough, Pete Davidson, as we speak, is working on a movie called The House, and the only still shot they released has him covered in blood. So he's being ritualistically or symbolically killed. I mean, for all the talk, it seems like it's all theater, I
It
suppose.
was almost another decapitation photo, wasn't it? Like his whole, it was like neck down blood.
Good
It
point.
seemed like
Good
like
point.
another decapitation.
Yes, the Pete Davidson photo. I didn't make that connection. Okay, so um, Pete Davidson was killed on Mars in an SNL skit where he pulls off his helmet and then his head blows up. So there's your head injury thing. Then you have him in the Kanye West video buried up to his head. You got Kanye carrying a severed head. And now you have him on a movie called The Home. And yeah, the blood is from the neck down, soaked in blood. Interesting though. Here we are talking about
Yeah, but
Kanye going OJ, and this guy is literally just soaked in blood.
it's not orange juice. But like but in the O.J. Simpson trial, the there's a term for it. A guy that sleeps with another man's wife. There's a name for that.
Well,
Shit, I can't think of it.
this guy,
but
this
that
guy,
person needs to die.
yeah. Well, he didn't. He did a public
Um.
thing when he tweeted to him or Instagrammed him, "I'm in bed with your wife," and then he has
Oh
the
yeah,
branding.
yeah. There we go. Yeah, he's been dying in public, but not like virtually, but not physically. So um,
I think there might be
that
something
might be
to it.
what I'm
And
doing.
look who
Yeah.
Kanye's hanging out with. I mean, bad influences hanging out with Marilyn Manson, and of course you got Manson is associated the name associated with what? Some guy sending a bunch of people to kill a bunch of movie stars. You know, that's what they did. It was a Hollywood thing that terrified Hollywood. And there's already this story about Manson terrifying Hollywood. Apparently, he had a couple of his girls move in like spies into Corey Feldman's house. And some suggest that's why Feldman's not talking about Spielberg. I mean, the idea, it seems to me, is that you have this story that it's been laid out here. It's like a repeat of 69 with the Manson. It's all set up. So I'm not going to be disappointed if Kanye doesn't go Manson and drive off into the sunset on a white Bronco, but I'm expecting the equivalent, even if it's just all theatrical like
Uh,
this.
yeah, adultery, infidelity. I'm trying to Google. I thought there was a better word for concubine. Someone like sleeping. But yeah, maybe Pete Davidson died metaphorically enough to where it's doing the same thing as the O.J. Simpson. Like when was the O.J. Simpson trial? Like 33 years ago or something
You
probably.
know, good. It could be a good idea to check that because he was just released in late December. So OJ's free, which I was noticing this in context because ever since that Halloween Kills came out, there's been all kinds of stuff about knifing. Like you had that David Ames got stabbed 19 times. You know that member of the MP. Then you had
Yeah,
Knife
that's
Talk.
yeah.
You had what that new track Knife Talk came out at Astroworld by we had the Astroworld event, but at the event, Drake was there and he did Knife Talk. Well, then at Out of Time in Los Angeles, Drakeo the Ruler gets his throat slashed. So all kinds of stabbiness with the Halloween movie out. Anyway, Halloween Kills just made it to HBO. And then I look up and I see this guy getting stabbed, well, symbolically, in a movie called The House. Now, again, what is The House? The House, I think, is a reference to a couple of things, but the Full House guy, the producer of the TV show Full House, he owns the house where the Manson killings happened, and he's selling them right now. So I've been seeing in the news a lot of stuff about House and a lot of callbacks to the Manson thing. So, it looks to me, just guessing by looking at the story they've laid out here, it looks to me that it doesn't end well for Pete. And then on Valentine's Day, Kanye sends a truck full of roses to Kim's house. And in the music video, they have a rose bush grow over Pete's grave. So there's another. These are basically ritualistic acts. These are threats or something.
Like what's that Seal song? Like with roses on the grave. I don't know. Probably ties into it somehow.
Probably does. Roses are very symbolic, representative of these secret societies. The rose, in fact, the name Rose, like Rose McGowan, the played Jackie Onassis in that Marilyn Manson video, Coma White. Rose is a goddess name, synonymous with Sophia, and you'll see these things used interchangeably. But but anyway, Pete Davidson's in a movie I just watched called King of Staten Island. And again, so his dad was 33, by the way, when he died on September the 11th. No joke.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Well, in the movie that I watched, King of Staten Island, he's driving at the very beginning of the movie, and two cars crash behind him, which make me think of the
Well,
Twin Towers.
we could get Pete Davidson's name, well, his father's name, and there's a memorial with all 3,000-ish people's names etched in like granite around the World Trade Center. We can go find his dad's name. It's probably there.
Oh,
They're
I'm
probably
sure it's
pretty
there.
good at
Yeah,
covering up
I'm
stuff.
pretty sure. Like it's one of the real fake deaths. It's not like a there are some people who falsely claim, but no, it's part of the story though, and I think it's a connected
He
story.
was tied up. He was tied up on the 93rd floor, like the bankers in the Titanic were tied up in the halls of the ship.
Is that what he said? 93rd floor?
I was just throwing it out
Oh,
there.
because he's got a 93 tattooed on his chest. I was just curious. But anyway, no. So
Yeah,
his the thing is, okay, in the movie King
that
of
was kind
Staten
of a coincidence.
in King of Staten
But he was
Island.
born in '93. That's his excuse.
Oh, interesting. Well,
He's a '93 baby.
the number 93 is the main number of the Thelemite secret society that runs this place. It's not the 666, it's not the 322 of the Skull and Bones, it's the 93. And they keep that one mostly secret. But in this movie I watched that it's on Netflix or whatever, it's total garbage. I couldn't get past 20 minutes of it. It's just so disgusting. But in it he plays himself basically because in it he plays a guy whose dad died as a fireman in a fire, and everybody keeps laughing at it. They make jokes about his dead dad, and I'm like, why would they do this? In what context is
Was
it
his
funny?
dad a fireman in 9/11?
Yeah, his dad was a fireman. He was actually so in this TV show, this movie, it's based on his life. It's semi biographical, and everybody's laughing at it, and
Is
I'm
it
like, is it a joke, an inside joke?
is it a movie or is it actually a TV show?
9/11 was an inside joke. No, it's actually it's a movie called King of Staten Island.
Okay. Um, I might look at. Hey, I watched a weird movie the other week called Domain. It's a 2016 where they tell people that a virus is spreading, and they put people into these bunkers, and they can only video chat with 7 people because to keep the servers down, they can't talk to everyone. So they put people into seven isolated cells with a worldwide pandemic, and then the people start like killing themselves and committing suicide and being depressed. But then they start trying to break out, and once they break out, they realize they're in a prison and that the virus was a lie, and it was all just I don't know. I don't want to spoil the end,
Oh, by all means,
but it,
spoil.
I
This
kind of
is
did.
actually fascinating because you're talking about before the pandemic. We were getting a lot of movies like this. So here I found it. A deadly virus wipes out most of humanity, and the survivors have to wait in self-sustaining bunkers with a networked video interface, and one by one they start disappearing. So they use the virus as an excuse to put everybody into lockdown so they can begin culling. Is that what we're seeing here?
Yeah, and it was and it turns out to be a lie, and it's very very boring. Like I watched the first 30 minutes and I skipped to like the last 20, like I do with most movies actually. I can't I can't deal with it. Like I should probably watch them on like 1.25 or 1.5. Just
Yeah,
movies bore
or
me,
multitask. I mean,
so I
do something boring
multi
like do
yeah.
your yeah. I do boring stuff while movies are on. A lot of these things I do have to skip. In fact, I was watching that documentary and I scroll through the bottom so I can see, okay, this person's talking. Let me skip that. I have no patience for a lot of this propaganda because they put the propaganda message first, and then the actual art is always secondary.
Yeah, I guess you could just read the synopsis of the domain, but uh just know in the end like the virus is fake and they did it on purpose just to put to lock people down type thing.
Wow. I mean, that's dangerous
Uh,
misinformation. And think about it. This movie could not have been made in 2020, and you couldn't get this movie made today, not with that plot line.
yeah, it's a B movie, but yeah, I do kind of multitask. I'll bring up some video games. I played the new Pokemon game that came out like a month or two ago, and they have space time distortion bubbles where space junk falls down in the bubbles and you collect it. So like you collect the space junk that falls down from the sky.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. And so
to
the
make
target
them bigger.
demographic of Pokemon fans, they number in probably the billions. Now they're all being acclimated to space junk, which didn't even exist a couple of years ago in any meaningful way.
Yeah, so like it's like the most it's like the best items in the game. Like you find the space distortion bubbles and you go in there and it turns nighttime and there's stars in the sky and like space junk falls down and you collect it while like random Pokemon randomly appear. I don't know.
Interesting. Interesting. Well,
It's
look,
just like your
it's predictive
space junk.
programming. It's predictive programming. It doesn't matter if it's a movie, a comic, or in some game like that. If they have you immersing yourself in it for hours, it's part of this preparation progress for process for when they start the space wars, when Russia starts shooting down the CubeSats or whatever happens.
Like is it like am I crazy because I think of Infinite Plane Society like constantly when I see all this predictive programming? I'm just like, oh my god, space junk falling, and I have to collect it. Like the only thing I was shocked, like it didn't, like none of them fall down and hit you. Like there's not a chance for like because it's like I guess it's a kids game, like it's not violent. Um, I don't know. It's just it was ridiculous. I was just like space
Well,
junk falling, really.
same with Wally. Wally's
Pokemon's a pretty big name.
exactly Pixar films like Wally. It starts off where you're seeing the Earth from space. I notice all the kids' films start off in space, and then they see the Earth, and then it zooms in to the local drama. So they always get the globe first. But in Wally, the globe is encrusted. It's surrounded by space junk. So this is just like with pollution in the oceans, where you are inundated with images of islands of trash and there's always save the whales. Now it's like save low Earth orbit. Like nobody cares about the oceans anymore. Now it's all about space junk.
Yeah, they're making a Buzz Lightyear this year. I saw it in a preview. Oh yeah, the movie I think that you made me go see that I wanted to refund.
Moonfall.
Yeah, I was like, don't look. It's not Don't Look Up. Yeah, Moonfall. Yeah, they showed Buzz Lightyear coming out, and it actually looked pretty good, actually.
I remember that trailer. I may check it out. And hey, on Moonfall and Don't Look Up, both of the protagonists who are like these scientific Noahs, both of them take anxiety pills every other scene. Did you notice that?
Yeah, like it's like the wearing glasses scientists look like the new bowl cut. Like, should we be afraid of those people now?
Well, yeah, you should listen to them. That's the message. Listen to the scientist with the neck beard who's stayed up all night studying his formula, who's predicting something, and no one wants to listen because we're polluting capitalists. That's the message. But they're both agoraphobic. So you got Leonardo DiCaprio's character popping pills. You got this other guy in Moonfall who happened to be an actor who was 33 years old. Think about it. You have a scientist who saves the world from the moon falling, and he's 33. He gives up his life to save everybody. And I mean, there's so many directions that movie goes. If you stayed through the whole thing, it turned into a really a mashup of
Yeah.
Kubrick's 2001: A
I
Space Odyssey,
I
Armageddon.
left when they lost, but I left when they launched into space. I gave up. I couldn't do it. I was like I went and watched the Super Bowl. I think that's what I did. I
Yeah,
left. I was just like, I'm just gonna go watch the Super Bowl.
I laughed when they went into space because it looked so much. I didn't think it could look faker than what NASA does. They intentionally made it look fake and goofy. I think to make NASA look good by comparison.
Well, Elon Musk even brags that they have better CGI than what they show us, or something like that.
Yeah, he said if we faked it, we would have used better CGI. And it's because NASA has to monopolize real. They have to monopolize what it looks like when you really go to space, when you really launch and take off. And if the movie companies do it better, then NASA looks fake by comparison. So I think that they go over to Moonfall and they say, hey, look, you got to really dumb this down a little bit. Yeah, have the space shuttle come out while it's getting hit by a tsunami and it blasts up out of the water. I mean, that's what they actually
Yeah.
did. It was so bad. You literally had a space shuttle coming up out of a tsunami, and all these people are watching from like a half mile away and cheer when it breaks the.
Literally, like, literally, that's the reason I went to watch the movie, just to see how dumb that was. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, now I can leave and go watch the Super Bowl. Because that was like the highlight. I don't even know what happened at the end of the movie. I was debating about like downloading it and watching the last 30 minutes or whatever, however long was left. But
Oh,
uh,
actually, you know what? Here's
I
the
just
ending, and it's kind of interesting what they did here. At the end, you find out that the moon was always just an arc, and that it contains all kinds of advanced technology that we can go
yeah,
take.
AI.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's controlled by an AI that you got to turn
because
on, and inside it's got all this technology, and it can.
the scientist knew everything. He already knew it was already all that. Like he explained it all. So I was just
Yes, the
I don't.
33-year-old
Okay, so
scientist
yeah, tell
decided
me.
to transcend and he became a digital avatar of himself and he stopped the moon from falling on us and he fought the black goo. That was the thing.
Wait,
There was a bad guy in the movie. It was the alien that was made up of
that's what
black goo.
happened.
Yes.
He became AI. He downloaded himself into the moon and fought it.
Yeah, well he fought the AI. Well, he fought the black goo, which was like this black goo alien thing, and it kept on showing up in the sign of a hexagram. Not a coincidence. So the
Yeah,
but the
it caused the moon fall or something.
Yeah, it was going to crash the moon, the ark, into the earth and kill us. So he fights the black goo and it kills him and he saves
By
the earth.
downloading himself into a computer.
Well, he dies and then you cry for a minute and then you find out a few minutes later that he survived because the moon's consciousness uploaded him. So now he's alive again in the moon and
Oh
he
my
saved the
god,
earth.
I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it now. I'm gonna go spend $4 and like rent it like an idiot.
Well, I would recommend watching it because the Moonfall Act. This is the subtext of it though, or this is the meta script. This guy.
I did not expect it to go there. I did not expect it. I thought it might just like I didn't even know how it was going to end. I didn't care. I just saw them go into space, and I knew that like the Super Bowl was about to start, and I was like, I'd rather be watching the Super Bowl. So I went next door and watched the Super Bowl.
Well, John
Um,
Bradley was the savior, and we could probably look into this character, this actor, and find some things out. But basically, he sacrifices himself to save mankind, and so he transcends, very Christ-like. Only he's a scientist, and he was born. The actor was born. His name's John West. He was born September of '88, making him 33 years of age. So what are the odds that they're going to put another 33-year-old savior in your face? They constantly do this.
yeah, it's either a shooter or a savior or a dyer.
Yeah, a martyr savior. In fact, Timothy McVeigh was 33, and they turned him into a martyr for the
Jesus
white.
Christ.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. In fact,
Jesus Christ.
when McVeigh was being executed, there was this composer, this classical music composer that was playing some music to help send his soul to heaven. And he said,
What?
yeah, yeah, Timothy McVeigh had a
Was that his
concert.
last wish?
It's such a joke.
What was his last wish?
It was like part of his, I guess his last, you get like a last
What was
meal, a last
what
song.
was his final meal? What was his final meal?
I'm not sure. But when they played this song, the guy's like, yeah, we played this song for him to help his soul ascend into heaven. And the composer said, Timothy McVeigh, like Jesus Christ, was 33 and universally despised at the time of his death. I'm like, wow, what a weird comparison.
Was the composer Jewish?
His name was Woodard. I don't know. I know that he was 33 and he remarked on this. This was an LA Times article. He said Timothy McVeigh was 33, I'm 33, McVeigh's post office box is 33, and he's held at a compound that has 33 acres.
It's 33 acres.
Yep, yep. So,
So, Hey, real quick, the Super Bowl. I was thinking there was going to be like a lot of water involved into it, but I guess it was like the Kanye West thing that he did a couple weeks later, to where like they performed in a puddle of water, and that's exactly what I envisioned the halftime show being at the Super Bowl. Like they're walking around in an inch of water or something, like
Yeah, interesting, interesting. You're right
risking
about that.
electricity.
At the Dawn Day 2 event, they wore
Um,
rain boots, and it looked like it had been flooded, and the lights were out, like it had been blacked out.
Yeah, that's the exact halftime show that I expected to happen. But I didn't know it was. I just heard Snoop Dogg was going to be in the halftime show. I didn't know it was going to be like Eminem and D12 and all them or whatever the people are
Well,
like that. Just
I was happy
throwback
to see
to
Snoop Dogg come out.
90s hip hop.
I was glad that Snoop Dogg came out in support of Ukraine. Did you see him? I mean, what he was wearing?
Yeah, but it symbolized like an ugly Christmas sweater, but also like water vibes. So it had some type of water crystal vibe in it to me.
I just saw blue and
It was
yellow.
like, yeah, it was an ugly Christmas sweater.
Well,
Yeah, it was an
blue
ugly
and
Christmas
yellow,
blue and yellow.
and this is before, right? This is before Ukraine became a thing. Before we all had to pray for Ukraine. And then Rams was, of course, Rams, blue and yellow, and of course they won or whatever. So
Oh, dude, I live in Dallas, and I drove through the other night, and every downtown skyscraper was blue and yellow. It was about a week and a half ago, so it's been a while, but I was just so disgusted. I was like, "Oh my god, like everyone's doing it." And then I drive through Pennsylvania, and their vaccine signs are bright yellow and light blue, saying like "vax," um, "vask," "mask," and something else, and get past the COVID or something like. I don't know. It's a bright yellow billboard with like that light blue lettering, and it's been up for months.
well, the
So it's
symbolism that we
another.
talk about, it it definitely extends into colors, and that's a big part of the Kabbalistic magic that is used throughout the media, in addition to the hand signs, the phonetic word magic, the sigils, and just the outright
Yeah, and then when
demonic invocation.
yeah, and then when you yeah when you combine the blue and yellow, you get green for like the Green New Deal. Like it's going to be global warming is the next thing. Because once you just put the two colors together, you see green.
Yeah, I think you're right about that too. The green world order and the revolution, and of course, green is all just a cover for the red watermelon Marxism, green on the outside, red on the inside.
Yeah, hey man, I gotta hop off, man, but I appreciate talking to you, man.
Awesome, yeah. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you taking the time. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Hey,
Oh, missed the shout out. If you want to just type in the chat, I'll go ahead and. Ryler05 says Rams beat the Titans in the Super Bowl, then Ravens beat the Giants in the Super Bowl. These were the last two Super Bowls before 9/11. Well, I'm ready for the next 9/11 event. It's on the calendar here. There's a couple of things that I think. One, a space 9/11, some definitive blow. I think it's the space station's going to get shot down by the Russians. Tomorrow, asteroid 2013 B076 is going to possibly impact the Earth at 30,000 miles per hour. I like how they don't notice these things till the day before it happens. They don't give you any time to prepare. The Mir space station crashed to Earth 21 years ago. So, the Mir space station fell. Let me get the exact date. It was in June. I believe it was the June before. Here we go. 9/11. No, it was 1999. Here we go. Continuous occupation ended in 99, but they delayed its fate until looks like 2001. Here we go. Uh, Leaving the station to come down to the atmosphere's drag could result in debris striking inhabited regions. So the engines of the attached Progress were fired 3 times on 23 March 2001. The third and final firing was sufficient to set the station on a course to the Pacific Ocean. Okay, so it was 3:23 a couple days ago was the anniversary of the Mir station falling. Alex Jones had a Sandy Hook deposition, and he was too sick to go, but then he hosted a show. So I think this might be looked at as a false claim. We'll see if he gets into trouble for it. Hopefully, that $165 million worth of sex scoop that he sold over the last 3 years is sufficient, to cover any fees or fines that he has to pay or damages. And yeah, if you didn't know, Super Male Vitality Plus, or whatever it is that he sells, is in fact the same powder, the same formula as Gwyneth Paltrow's Sex Scoop. Different labels, same producer. And he sold $165 million worth of this goop. Rich Flat says the weekly asteroid scare. Yeah, I commented on how NASA's 100% accurate with outgoing objects going out millions or billions or trillions of miles. Every time, 100%. They can shoot a probe with 100% accuracy any distance, but incoming, they're never right. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey. Okay, there we go. Hey, caller, what's up? Are you Mandela affected?
Not at the moment, but that could change.
Oh, yeah, it could change.
Depending on my interpretation and everyone else's interpretation.
You could open the fridge and your favorite food item might have a different logo. I mean, these things are
possible.
Everything's in flux. Nothing is stationary. Everything's always changing according to the Mandela effect. Did you hear the live stream earlier today when I was going through the reasons why I think the Mandela effect is a psyop?
No, but I'd like to hear what you say about that.
Well, basically, I think that the Mandela effect is a magic trick. It's a sleight of mind. It's a party trick, but it's taken out of context. And they use this little trick which plays upon faulty eyewitness testimony and the influence of the interrogator. This is basically a mind game. And I think they're doing this in order to sabotage clear thinking media analysts who notice that the news is fake. It's to drive us crazy, is what I think.
Well, it's a little bit of baiting then, because clearly everybody's memory is going to be slightly off at a lot of these things, right? Some of these things aren't even that important to you, but then when somebody brings them up, you're kind of put on the spot and you feel like you have to know the answer, where in fact you really never cared and it didn't really matter that much to you, hence the sort of fog in it. Have you put the connection with Obama and his "I've been to the 57 states" comment? I think there's a parallel here between this, because I've noticed this with foreigners. They get taught that the United States has 52 states over and over again. And I think this is sort of a Mandela effect, where it's been repeated so many times it becomes a part of your memory. Whether it's true or not, it's kind of irrelevant. You were taught it, so it gets solidified.
Precisely. Like you said, never cared. Like, you're put on the spot to answer an either-or question when it's not an either-or. There's an infinite number of possibilities, but they don't set it up that way. So they kind of force you, like an extortionist, to choose one or the other. And if there's not an opt-out, then by definition, it's an extorted answer. It may not feel like you're under duress, but it's like this is the interrogator bias at work. This is what causes wrongful convictions, faulty eyewitness testimony. And so you may not have cared about this or that logo or label. It just never was important to you. So you just have the default memory, and you have many things that collectively there's not unanimous agreement on. Lots of misremembered song lyrics, and I don't see the Mandela effect calling those Mandela effects.
Well, the world's clearly a world of many and not a world of ones and twos, and we constantly try to narrow our decisions in between ones and twos, zeros and ones, red or blue, and it's it's such a pathetic simplification of what we're actually experiencing in our day-to-day lives. You can't even wake up on a day where it's exactly the same as the day before, but yet we kind of membrane it into the sameness, right? It is kind of the same. I have kind of the same routine. I kind of do the same things, but it really isn't the same. There's variance. There's always variance.
Well, they don't tolerate
I
ambiguity.
think this is,
That's what the thing is. Like sometimes, yeah, things are ambiguous. And if memories were perfect, we would all be straight A students. And the fact that you have F and D and C tells you on a multiple choice test, that we don't all have perfect memories. And I liken it to if you take a multiple choice test and you don't know the answer to a couple questions, but you can narrow it down, and then you make the best choice of the two based on a feeling and bias confirmation. That's kind of what the Mandela effect are doing. They're being called up on a pop quiz and they didn't study for it recently. So they're coming up with their best guess and they're trying to please the teacher, the interrogator, because the person asking you about a Mandela effect is always affected. So they have an agenda. They're trying to convert. You never find someone who's not interested in the topic trying to find out if somebody else has a discrepancy.
I agree. It's a loaded question, like most groupthink operations. Just like our last 2 years of the bug under the bed situation. Once you plant the seed into somebody's head, then anything can be tied into that seed. Back to the ones and the zeros, right? You're simplifying the boogeyman. You're simplifying the fear or the evil or the badness. Much like the Russia-Ukraine thing, one side good, one side evil. If you're with the gay Jewish actor, you're on the right side. If you're against the bear rustling Russian, you're on the right side. So
yeah, what a perfect setup. You can look. That's perfect right there. How they set that up as this guy here prancing around in stilettos, and this guy here shirtless riding a bear. Like two different versions of the ideal as the left and the right. A strong man versus this new world order cosmopolitan eunuch or whatever. And I'm looking at it as like Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse, left and the right. They really love to polarize everything. And Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse have the exact same birthday.
not surprising.
Oh yeah, I mean we're talking about the day and the year, January 3rd, 2003. Both of those political agitators on perfectly diametrically opposed sides of the fence of the political split. Yeah, they were born that same day, and that just suggests to me more than anything. Maybe it's just as a metaphor, or maybe it's intentional, but whatever. It just shows you that they want us to be looking in two different directions and to be staring at each other across a chasm at all times.
And back to all sides being controlled. People constantly fall for their favorite actor, and there's so many variants of these favorite actors within the spectrums of each. If we have to keep it in this left-right argument, but there's more to it than that, obviously, than just the left-right paradigm. There's plenty of lukewarmers in the middle that need to be manipulated also.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you have the left and right and you have a split, and you have people who don't consciously choose a side, but you can kind of see which way they're going based on their values or their attitudes. Usually it's the political footballs that give it away. And people line up so perfectly on these sides. It amazes me. It amazes me that if you're for open borders, you're probably for mandatory vax. And if you're against mandatory vax, you probably believe in the Second Amendment. And these are consistent patterns I've noticed. And the significance is this: borders that are closed relate to your skin that is closed. You don't want alien invaders. Your ability to defend yourself with a gun it correlates to your ability to have your own immune system versus the state defends you with its guns or its injected immune system. So I see this needle versus gun dialectic setup where the needle side is on the side of big government tyranny, benevolent dictatorship, whereas the other side believes in autonomous individuals looking after themselves. So it's a rift in society, and the vax issue just highlighted it.
Well, isn't this what the controllers are actually masters of? Psychology and social psychology. I mean, they have it down to where they're manipulating the child in the womb before it's born under a certain pretense and astrological sign and so forth. And then when it's born, they can prod and poke and know exactly what that child's going to end up being. Like they've been doing this for thousands of years, right? So to manipulate us sort of out of the womb is kind of child's play for them. We all kind of fit in these categories, maybe not all of us, but most of us do, one way or the other. And at the very least, we fall into these categories when we're at our weakest, right? Trump would be a great example of this. I'm sure he pulled a lot of people in that in hindsight wouldn't have been, but given the circumstance and given the choice, it worked, right? You could go back 10 years, you would laugh at that working. But
Oh, you can go back to 2015. He had to go up against 15 other candidates to see who would be the one. And the Republican Party was against him until the end, and everybody laughed at the idea that he would come out on top. So consensus opinion is always wrong, and it's just so dramatically wrong, and it never seems to recognize this. It just moves on to the next thing. It doesn't know when it's been duped.
Uh, it doesn't know when it's been duped, but then it keeps going back to the same feedback loop of information to get duped again. And this is what we've seen for the last, in the short term, the last 2 years. It's a great example because it still should be in people's heads, even though I bring up examples 2 years ago, people say, what, that happened? So it shows you how quick they can move the ball and change people's perception. But the last 2 years are proof both sides are working together. There really is no left and right. They both push the ball across the, first down marker, goal line, whatever analogy you want to use, together. And when you bring this up to people, they still get into their left-right team narrative on it, right? And I
Well,
think this is
there's
the hardest thing to break through.
there's a relationship that people have with the media. It's a codependent relationship. The news media, in addition to being a liar, is a narcissist. And the people who believe it and follow it, who are attached to it for their information and their worldview and their sanity, yeah, they're codependently in bondage with it. And so it's normal for the abused to constantly go back after they've been lied to. And
Could we call them codependent narcissists?
In a way, you could. And they're trapped in a cycle of abuse. And we could call it the 24/7 news cycle. It's not a coincidence that Netflix's one of its founders and original CEOs is the nephew of Edward Bernays, the father of public relations. And they're both related to Sigmund Freud.
Well, exactly. And then you can look into the whole space agency and the obvious Nazi, connection. Then you can get into the L. Ron Hubbard connection and space, rocketeering connection. I think all those things tie together, right? It's the same group.
It absolutely does.
The same facade.
Yes, exactly. And the clearest example to me that we're in a global cult, a doomsday cult, is the universal acceptance of the climate change narrative of global warming in response to human activity. They needed to replace the God that could punish the sinners that the priests were the spokesmouths for. Well, they have, and it's the globe. And so the scientists have the globe as this volatile thing. It's both fragile, but it could also kill us if we don't adjust our behaviors. And so I'm looking at that, and then I look at NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and I look at their iconography. Their symbolism. They actually use a dove, which is Noah's symbol from the Bible. So yeah, they've actually taken ancient myths and grafted them onto the modern mind. So the modern paradigm is actually quite superstitious and archaic.
it's almost become completely material. The level of spirituality, if that's the word we're going to use, is almost non-existent in modern culture, at least in the United States. Again, the last 2 years of watching people walk in their funk and their sort of consumerist, tourist mindset, where I just need to get back to shopping at Costco and getting into my routine. And, all this is revolved around materialism, right? There was nothing about their spirituality was taken away. Their materialism was taken away. Like, they couldn't go point A to point B. They couldn't go party at their favorite party spot. Maybe not all this materialism was taken away, and this is by design, right? Selective materialism was taken away. But overall, we really have a void of what ought to be done. That never was said. There was never that argument. It was, well, X is going to happen to me, materialism, then this is going to happen to me, materialism. Therefore, I need to do this. Always set up as something like that. Never set up as a moral question. Always set up as, this thing is going to kill you, it's going to kill X amount of people, therefore we need to do this thing.
Well, Easter 2020 was an eye-opener for me. The whole Holy Week, Easter season, and then after that, I'm like, wait, look who's staying home. All the churches are basically, for the most part, kowtowing to this thing. I mean, you had a few renegade preachers here and there, and this was also very psyopy. It seemed like any of the churches that try to stay open, their very vocal and visible leader would just die of COVID. Like, those were all just so phony to me. But it showed me, though, that
or get arrested and make a big deal about it or whatever.
right, to set the example that the people who don't go along with this are anti-authoritarian and irrational and dangerous, which isn't the case. The dangerous people are the ones locking you down. They're the irrational ones. They're the fascist control freaks who think nothing of shutting it all down. But anyway, over what? Hypochondria? But it showed me, though, that when, like at the various
The
religious...
same people that were sharing the gollop of wine at church for the last 25 years are all of a sudden hypochondria. But yes, go ahead.
Exactly. But I was just noting how the religious pilgrimages were all stopping. Everyone stayed home. No one's running loops around the big cube at Mecca. And I'm like, what's going on here? What happened is everyone's kneeling to the new crown. There's a new god in town. It's actually, I think, COVID-19 is a replacement devil. So you have the angry globe god, but it's not just the angry god you got to worry about. You got to worry about the devil. And how does the devil spread? Well, through the unsaved, through his emissaries, and you get it from them. And so I think they use COVID as a way of reintroducing the concept of tangible evil that you have to cleanse yourself against. Hand sanitizer is just a modern replacement for the holy water in this context, where to save yourself from this, you needed this like ritual you could do. So I think they use COVID to introduce a level of superstition and fear of possession, and then to elevate in the eyes of the public the priesthood, and then to give us the need to create the need for salvation. Of course, the vaccine is the communion, the thing that would save you, the salvation. So anyway, yeah, I thought COVID was introduced to help punk all the rest of the religions and show them that science is boss. The one religion that everyone agrees with is science, and the new heaven, outer space, isn't disputed by any of the religions that argue over what heaven looks like.
And that would be sort of a parallel to their god Moloch, also known as the Canaanite El Saturn, right? We brought up Saturn before. The parents of Zeus and Jupiter, right? Horus. So impregnated at the first light by the rising sun. So that's basically the story of Easter for the occult, right? And this is Easter coming up. So their Phoenician god Ishtar, the goddess of the grove, has
Oh, hey, I'm glad you brought that up. Your phone got cut off, but Easter's coming up, and yeah, take a notice to the colors. The reason why they use the purple cloths on the tables. They cover the crucifix in purple.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that, like you're saying, they're definitely replacing the. They constantly try to replace the biblical story with their alternate story or parallel story or reverse story, if you will. It's usually a reverse story, but they definitely want to play on the numbers and the dates and the gen story. I guess to that note would be we do 9/11 a lot, and a lot of people know the meanings of that. Um, and 7/11 is a repeating deal, but 4/11 is another one that they've snaked out of the Bible, from Acts 4:11, where Jesus is the cornerstone the builders rejected. But then they give us 4/11 of the number we call for information,
Wait. Acts
and
4:11
then
is
not.
the Jesus is the cornerstone. Interestingly enough, I was listening to a podcast recorded in 2020 with Jordan Maxwell, and he said
Okay.
that the translation is chief cornerstone. And what he said that what this means is if you look at a pyramid, the stone that reaches all the corners is the capstone. The meaning is that Jesus is the eye in the pyramid, the chief cornerstone, the capstone. Acts 4:11 though. That's interesting because yeah, he was talking about that verse, but he didn't mention which one it was.
Well, so not by accident, they give us 4/11 for our information. And back in the day when you had to call for time, you were calling, you're using your phone for information with 411. And then probably not by coincidence, if you add 4, 1, and 1, you get 6. Saturn being the sixth planet and the number of man. If you take 4 and you times it by 11, you get 44, or Chronos, time, and he has his 44 assistants. So I think that's another encoded everyday use. They gave us 9/11, they gave us 4/11,
Fascinating.
and they gave us 7/11 on the corners.
One that I've noticed. I was studying runes and the Hebrew character, just the Hebrew letters and how they all kind of relate. And the thing about these numbers, like you can look at your keyboard, the four, for example, the way the four is drawn, it is a cross in there. And the number four, throughout numerology or and in symbolic systems, it generally refers to the four seasons. It's always a solar thing. And the four seasons, you can find the four suits in the tarot in the playing cards actually relate to the four seasons, and the 52 cards, 52 weeks. So these symbols have been used again and again in various contexts, but I've noticed that in a lot of psyops, they use 42 to symbolize Saturn. And I noticed that you take the 4 and you get the 2 and you put them together and it's the sigil of Saturn. And it even makes sense when you look at the meanings, because Saturn is an agrarian god of the harvest. So if you look at the 2, or the reversed S looking symbol at the bottom of the cross, that would be the scythe. And Saturn is Father Time, the grim reaper. That's because he's there in the fall at the harvest. But anyway, that's just another example. 42 is elite code for Saturn. That's why Bezos spent $42 million on a clock that he installed in the mountain. That's why Elon Musk uses the number 42 all over his CubeSat agenda. 42, code for Saturn worship.
And some overt pawns of the cabal in sports media, as we pointed out before. As far as, I would say, the Vegas Harvest Festival was a coded event. Stephen Paddock being the martyr in the sheep pen, Stephen Paddock.
A paddock,
he
yeah.
opens
And
fire at Route 91, right?
it's Harvest Festival, Las Vegas, which means the meadows. Then, of course, yeah, they were in a fenced-in area at a concert, and then Paddock is his name. So harvesting the people, it all did make sense from.
Martyring the sheep pen, basically, is what they're saying. And then Route 91, if you take the occult 13, so the occult divide the seasons in uh, 4 seasons of 13 weeks. And then if you add 1 through 13, you get 91 for your Route 91. And then the festival was exactly 91 days before the end of 2017 over the Feast of Atonement.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, there's a video that you could find. It's someone who found that in the movie Hangover, I think it's Hangover in Vegas. I don't know if it's part three, but there's a movie called Hangover where it's about these drunk
I think I
guys.
lived that movie, but
Right. Well, um, the one that starts off, the opening song is called um, 13 by Glenn Danzig of the Misfits. So the song 13
okay.
starts is like on the opening thing, and it has all kinds of predictive programming where the drunk guys are laying in the street in Vegas in full view of the Mandalay, and they're laying in the same places where victims were hiding behind cars. And then you have a few references here and there to the Vegas shooting in that movie before it happened, of course. But yeah, The Hangover has predictive programming for the Vegas shooting, and number 13 is super connected with it. And then what's more, 13 months after Vegas, 50 of the survivors were shot at the borderland, at the borderline bar and grill in Thousand Oaks.
So that's all fascinating. I didn't know the first part of that. The second part I'm aware of. I'm actually familiar with that area, and I've actually been to that location before it was the border. Big boy back in the day. And I think the interesting thing about that incident is two things, or three things I'll point out. One, there's a magic bullet, so there's less shots fired than people killed. Is the obvious Freemason actor Kushner, what's his name? Kind of fell out of grace with the Hollywood crowd. He hasn't really been anything for a while. Not Kushner. He was boyfriend with Demi Moore for a while.
Yeah, I'm thinking Ashton
because of
Kutcher.
it.
Isn't that him? Ashton Kutcher?
Okay. Yeah, that's him. So his story was he received a handgun in the parking lot at the Borderline Grill. You can look this one up. And he felt bad about it after the shooting. So he was supposed to be the point man, guns advocate, or limit guns guy on the scene. It didn't possibly quite work, I guess. Maybe that one didn't work. But there's the obvious mother crisis actor that's with the Saga shooting, that's wearing the MGM shirt. She was with the Pulse nightclub shooting.
Oh, shout out to Waynell
And then
Sexton.
the last,
Yeah, we love her. She's one of our favorite
yeah,
crisis actresses.
and Waynell. So that's four, I guess. We got her on. She is MVP of crisis actors at the moment. She's definitely heading the award show and so forth. But the other weird thing about all that, the Thousand Oaks Sheriff badge, if you look at it on the side of their car, distinctly has the same symbol from the FBI for pedophilia.
Oh,
And it's not
okay,
even
okay.
like that.
That's
Correct.
it should surprise me, but it doesn't. The Thousand Oaks shooting.
So what I'm saying is
Yeah.
the Freemason connection in that area is strong.
Well, and if anybody has any doubts, like this to me, this proves that Vegas was fake, because 13 months later, 50 of the same people are shot at again, and what's more, concurrent with the second shooting, there was a drill going on at the same time, which is usually a fast. Whenever you find out there's a school shooting, the first thing you do is, were they doing drills the week before or the day of with Parkland? Well, in this case, there was a drill for a Vegas style shooting going on during the Thousand Oaks borderline bar and grill shooting with an identical number of victims. So you can find newspaper articles about it, and they say it was an eerie coincidence. Well, that's just one eerie coincidence among hundreds with this particular series of events. Oh, look at this guy in the chat. He says,
I
I
think
went to, listen to this. This is how you know. These people will lie to defend the matrix of lies reflexively. He says, I went to high school with a guy who got shot and killed at Pulse. Like, I guarantee that he couldn't type the name because he would have to make it up. The Pulse nightclub had 300 people inside, but only 7 cars outside. So you talked about magic bullets. Well, what about magic LGBT clown cars where 400 people fit in a car? I mean, how do you explain that? An empty parking lot and a packed nightclub? No way.
I would I wouldn't say nobody dies at these events ever. I think the Vegas thing, there might have been some actual gunfire. Some people might have died. Some people might have died coincidentally that night also and got thrown into the tag. I would say I don't want to overstate and say nobody ever dies
Well,
at these
wait,
things,
there's a good
but
point here that you're bringing up, though. The reason why I say nobody is that how many people died while they were making the movie Braveheart with Mel Gibson? Like, how many people lost their heads? How many people got shot with arrows? There had to have just at least one, right? Maybe just an accident. Maybe somebody fell off a horse. There had to have at least been a death, right?
slip coming off the plank or whatever.
So my point being, we're not looking at an actual military operation. We're not looking at an actual false flag. We're actually looking at a psyop. We're looking at a movie. It's theatrical. Nobody would die because these cheap $2,000 crisis actors would blow the whistle. They would say, hey, I'm not being part of a war crime. If one person dies, it becomes a snuff film. It becomes a conspiracy, it becomes a war crime, and it becomes a major deal. However, if it's merely a psyop and nobody dies, nobody has blood on their hands. And I think they even recruit people who are copacetic with the goals. Like, if you're a fascist and you want to take away guns, maybe you could find it easy as an actor to portray yourself as a victim on TV. But you certainly wouldn't stand by and let somebody get their head blown off to score some political points. So no, I don't think there's any murders concurrent with psyops. I think it would contradict the whole thing.
I have a good friend that knows somebody that died in Vegas on the Vegas harvest thing
See,
during that date.
the thing is,
He
everybody
wouldn't be lying.
everybody knows somebody who has a friend who knows somebody who died at this or that event. And I'm saying if there was one crisis actor, it was all crisis actors. There's no middle ground. There's not a false flag happening, as
Well,
Alex Jones would tell you.
there could be a middle ground. There could be some people actually died that night for whatever reason. They got thrown into the category of being shot. That's all I'm saying.
You know what? I heard Mark
Kobe
Sargent make that
felt-
argument. I've heard people say, well, maybe some people knew too much. They had to kill some people. And I'm just telling you, if one person dies around a bunch of drama actors, one person literally dies, they're all complicit in murder. So now you're talking about people doing real life Squid Games type stuff, where I'm saying, no, the burden of proof is on you to prove that any bullets were actually fired. And that hasn't even been proven yet. So if you're going to assert somebody died, you're on the side of the mainstream media on this one, because the only evidence we have is some really crappy MP3 they play through the speakers. There was no evidence of actual gunfire at Vegas that night, despite what they tell you on the news.
Oh, I've gone through 6 ways to Sunday, but I bring that up because, you know, that's a real person, 2 real people, and it's not just someone that knew somebody. It was, you know, I got a name and all that. It's the same thing with the Kobe crash. Do you think Kobe really died in the helicopter crash, or that helicopter actually crashed?
You know, okay, a couple things about that. One, there's
Not
some
to totally change the subject, but it's
no, this
it's
is
the same. It's the same psyop, if you will, right?
okay with the Kobe thing. You have purported witnesses, but one of the first things that stood out to me was it was reported by TMZ, and I used to do decedent transport here part time. You know, so like I was on call with the beeper and I had a van. So the OMI, Office of the Medical Investigator, would call me or beat me when I would have to go down to wherever somebody crashed or suicided or somebody got shot, and I'd take the body over to the morgue.
Right.
Now there's a process where first there's the death, then there's the police show up, then the media show up, but next of kin have to be notified. And the idea that TMZ would look at a burning pile of wreckage and then report the names of the deceased, that would never happen. It was just totally out of the order of operations, and there's no way they could have known who was in it or who was dead. There's just no way, not from that distance. And so I just think that the story was actually pushed by TMZ first. And I notice a lot of these psyops that involve celebrities don't play out like regular crime scenes or accident scenes. So I just thought, it doesn't make sense. There's no way anybody even identified a body to actually make a headline story about it at that time. It was staged. Then he's buried in Corona del Mar. I mean, there are so many examples of Kobe Bryant dying in helicopters, in predictive programming, in commercials,
Oh
in a
yeah, absolutely.
cartoon, Legends of Chamberlain Heights. I mean, the idea that he actually died is contradicted by all of the predictive programming. And do you know who the last person to interview Kobe Bryant alive was? Steven Jackson.
Uh,
Steven Jackson, George
yeah, yeah,
Floyd's
exactly.
twin. What are the odds?
And he passed the mantle to LeBron, if you will, on his social media that evening. Or
Wait,
LeBron
this
did,
is
one or the
interesting.
other.
We have two people in D Live that are connected to these events. What are the odds? And they're listening to Infinite Plane Radio. One guy in the chat here says he knows somebody whose cousin's MMA teacher was on that helicopter trying to hitch a ride and died that day, not fake. So,
So the funny thing is, the same guy I was telling you about Vegas that I trust, uh, went to the Kobe Academy, knew one of the parents, and they supposedly were on the helicopter, and they reported as dead, and they're missing.
so
Never seen them
you're
again.
you're one
So
person
there's
removed.
another one.
You're one person removed from two major league psyops, like actual victims. Vegas and the Kobe thing. Like you're basically one hearsay away from it. Like that's like one person could tell you something and then you would have your
Well,
confirmation.
they could be duped also. I'm not saying that they couldn't be, but I'm just trying to play. I'm trying to play the looking for the truth here. Um,
Well, looking for the truth
I don't want to
starts
say
with correctly establishing who owns the burden of proof on an extraordinary claim. And the extraordinary claim put forth by the media is that this shooting happened the way as presented. And I've seen enough with the whole Vegas thing to know that it's completely contrived. I went out there to where it
well,
was,
there's
and
no there's the official story is a joke that he got all the shots off from his rim and all that. That parts were not. We're on
but
the
for some
same
weird reason,
plane
a
there.
lot of people, a lot of truthers have a hard time letting go of all the death. Like you're like, nobody died at Boston, nobody had their legs blown off, and they're like, no, don't take that away from me. It's like, look, you're gonna have to let it go. They're
Well,
psyoping you. There were no victims, and I'm sorry if it bothers you that these people didn't die horrible deaths, but they're still alive and they got paid.
right. They want to believe that there's actually the covert operations going on and that they're being foiled once in a while, and sometimes they're being taken off. When in reality is it's all a stage.
And,
Except for, like I'm saying, the rare cases where somebody dies during the stage.
okay, so it looks like Lonely Chef in chat might have been there at Pulse during the shooting. Oh no, he's not claiming that. Okay, here's the
Okay.
thing. He says he lived in he says I lived in Orlando, so it wasn't fake. So if you lived near a psyop, it's gonna feel realer to you. It's just this weird phenomenon I've noticed. Like it had to be real. I was there. You weren't there. And you know what? There are all kinds of
I
liars.
used to live right down the street from where I used to live right down the street from where Kobe crashes, and doesn't mean I believe it's real. But
Well,
I'm also trying to bring you every bit of information that I have on it.
sure. Well, the predictive programming to me would suggest that if it was real, then that ought to change your life because you saw some hardcore synchronicities that should blow your mind. Like it should humble you to look at that cartoon where Kobe crashes and that commercial where a helicopter blows up with him in it. It should humble you to say, "Wow, look at all these coincidences like God was showing us in advance." Because you can't just ignore these things.
Well,
But the Occam's razor approach would be, what's more likely? That we saw some miraculous premonitions or predictions just occurring in the media, or that this is all a psyop. And I'm on team, it's all fake if 10% of it's fake for the most part.
I agree with that statement for the most part. COVID and Kobe means God's door, to back up what you just said, by the way. And we all know where Satan's holy door is in the anatomy. Not a surprise that sodomy is derived from Sodom to burn as in lust described in Genesis 13:13 and Romans 1:27. So,
Interesting.
so yes, so that was a spectacle. It was burning the Kobe of God's door. There was definitely three predictive programs with him. There was the cartoon, the animation, where he dies, and they say, "Hey, pass the ball," and they say, "Hey,
Let
you
me
never
run
get
this
to
by
pass
you
the
too.
ball."
So his last interview alive with Steven Jackson, the twin, again, Steven Jackson,
Yeah.
42, twin of George Floyd. At the end of the interview, they did a Masonic grip, not a handshake. It was specifically a Masonic grip. So you see the symbolism, the predictive programming, all the hallmarks of it being a psyop. So that removes all the doubt to me that this thing was a real thing. But it gets deeper because his 42nd birthday was celebrated posthumously by the NBA, and this was in August of 2020, Kenosha Week. They called it Mamba Week. So for Mamba Week, they're celebrating Kobe's 42. So he's 42 now, like his twin, like George Floyd's twin, Steven Jackson. So I see this 42. Well, at that same time, the MLB was honoring Mr. 42, Jackie Robinson. So the MLB had nothing but 42s. NBA celebrating this guy's 42. Then Chadwick Boseman dies at 42 and he played the Black Panther. And so I was noticing that Kobe Bryant's birthday week was playing into all of the same psyops and overlapping with the same characters to the point where, yeah, I was pretty convinced there. We're looking at his death was staged, and it was sort of I kind of think that his death, that date, kind of marked when the COVID thing ramped up over here. And again, he was buried in Corona Del Mar.
Well, absolutely. I look at it as the Kobe sacrifice, if you will, as the kickoff for Corona, right? So, as you say, laid to rest in Corona Del Mar. It means God's door, aka Babylon, right? So this is definitely from the occult. CV equals 322. We just had 322. This is the Brotherhood of Death, snow name for Genesis 3:22, and not so coincidentally, universal health care was signed into law on Sunday 3:22 at exactly 10:22 Eastern, which so happens to be 3:22 Universal Time.
Wow.
So we have a 3:22 COVID connection.
Time control. I talked about 33-year-old martyrs. They love to flaunt in our face. I was talking about the scientist martyr in Moonfall. Well, the guy who blew the whistle about COVID in Wuhan, his name was Wee Lion. At least that's how it's spelled. 33-year-old. These patterns that we're pointing out, the timing of things. To me, this just shows the obsessive and tight control that they have over the nuance here. Like on 322, you had that King Supers shooting last year in Boulder, Colorado. And I just looked at the news article just to kind of update myself on it. And guess what time the police entered King Supers store number 33 on 322?
Let me guess. 322.
Yeah, 322, right? I'm like, what? 322? They went in on 322, and then the guy comes out with one leg bloody. It looked so staged, but anyway, what is
Wasn't
it?
that on at 33 Avenue also, or something to that degree? Or right before that, there might have been a shooting in a police station on 33rd Avenue at the same time.
Yeah, if we go back, we'll find because you had 33 union members in the store at the time. It was store number 33, and then you had well, there was
That's what it was.
there were so many problems with that story, but yeah, King Super day for a psyop.
Well, 33 steps on the pyramid representing the 33 degrees of Freemasonry. So that wouldn't be a surprise. What's a surprise? What's a surprise is there was an anti-Freemason party in the United States at one time when I guess people had their shit together. And since then, it's been downhill.
Yeah, that was the first third party. Because, like, I've been talking about the mind game of the Mandela effect and how it's about imposing a binary, extorting a response, not a real option, not a real choice. And I think that's how it is with politics. The two heads of the same bird, this double-headed eagle thing they're always flaunting. And so the anti-Masonic Party was the first third party challenge, and I guess it just didn't go anywhere. But
Well, they should have been called they did something for a little while. They should have been called the anti-Hegelian dialectic party, because that's kind of what they were pointing out with our two-party systems, two heads of the same stake. I know you get this, and most of your listeners probably do, but it needs to be said over and over again, because until people break out of that spell, we're not going to get out of the situation we're in.
yeah, and I pay
They
attention
keep
to.
getting more power.
Yeah, I think we have to be aware of at least the fact that there is an entrenched elite, and they communicate above the heads of the sheeple. And they have such disdain for those of us that aren't sheeple. Like, they know we exist, because they have a way to brand you. Oh, you're not falling for the programming. You're a conspiracist. You're a, it's always a negative term too. It's not, oh, you're a critical consumer of information. No, it's, uh-oh, we have one that can see.
I've never been called a free thinker, but been called other things.
Yeah, I've been pretty much quiet about most of these things because it's just you're not going to reach a receptive audience if people are true believers in the world stage as presented. But um, most of my research was stultified by a lack of people, in proximity to compare notes, because it's like a puzzle with a million pieces. You could spend a lifetime on it, maybe you'll get it done, but it helps to have other researchers and a research pool. And that's what's happened in the last few years. And I think that's why they've had this internet clampdown on YouTube and other sites. It's because you're having communities of people forming a people's media out, and it's truly decentralized. And so the best they can do is gatekeep it and use a lot of shame tactics and cult tactics to corral stuff. But anyway, it just seems to me that this idea of a new world order, it's just like what Joe Biden said it the other day. It's so commonplace. It's not even shocking to hear anymore. It's like we're already in the post reset, and it's pretty obvious that the people that run this place love their Saturn worship. They love their obelisks. They love their 666, whatever all that stuff means.
And if you just try to point out to anybody that's not somewhat in tune to it, then you're immediately labeled the conspiracy theorist, out there guy, Alex Jones guy, what have you. But the connections are there's so many of the connections, and it's so consistent. That's the part that's frustrating to me, is you can show them a pattern, and then anywhere else in their life, you show them that pattern, they'd be on it, right? If you showed them a stock pattern, if you showed them anything else, right, they'd be on it. But in this particular case, for whatever reason, it's not true, because it's not within their scope of understanding or wanting to understand. I think most of it is most people don't want to actually get to that level. It's just too uncomfortable. That it's too hard to get to the rest of their stuff. They got to get through it.
There's pressure against it. The system, the matrix, whatever, it has its immune system. I mentioned the movie Free Guy, and the way that Free Guy became free and he ceased being a pre-programmed NPC is he started breaking his programming. So he had like a collection of clothes to wear. They all looked the same, but he just grabbed one further on the left. He started breaking his programming. And then you had Truman in the Truman Show. It started to break for him when he started noticing patterns. And everybody around him said, nothing to see here. Don't pay attention. It's always pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And then in the Matrix, you have Neo with the cat and the glitch in the Matrix. And that's what we're pointing out here, is if you point out the inconsistencies, the continuity errors, the glitches, the crisis actors, the green screens, the immune system of this thing will just shut you up. They'll say, nope, nothing to see here. And it's just gaslighting. And a lot of people are just gaslit, and what gaslighting does is it gets you to doubt your immediate perceptions and to default to the person who always corrects you. So if you're always corrected by the news and you always go with that correction, eventually you cease to rely on your own perceptions. So we do live with a lot of gaslit people who've been rendered into NPCs. They're just following a program.
Well, it's foundational. Like we were gaslit at an age where we couldn't even defend ourselves, right? We were presented with all these ideas that were facts. Spinning ball, dinosaurs died from this big spectacular thing. You came from a hairy monkey. And that was all before I could actually make my own pancakes. So that was just instilled in us. The 13 colonies, Benjamin Franklin was a good guy. He didn't actually fund Washington to set up a war against the English that was as fake as the Iraq War. No, it was this big spectacular uprising where we were founded into, freedom, where we then made a constitution that enslaved you for the next 240 plus years. Proving this was the Civil War. But, the English gave up as easy as the Iraqis did in the Iraq War. And then who owned Iraq after, we know who owns Iraq, the Zionists, but the same people that went to war with Iraq. Same idea. And the same Zionists actually went to war with America, but it wasn't a war.
Now, you mentioned 17.
Same.
Yeah,
Okay.
1776, right? And on the 22nd of last month, Pluto returned to the point where it was on July 4th, 1776. And I tend to think that the elite, the ones who are essentially in control of writing our histories, and the ones who tell us what happened versus who just basically write it. I think they think in long terms like this, and they plan their things astrologically. Like this great reset timed itself perfectly with the Saturn Jupiter, not only just a conjunction, but a conjunction on a winter solstice, which we haven't seen since Jesus was born. So it's like, oh, well, year zero. So we hit a reset year with the same alignment, and they time these things this way. And the Great Reset was not a new idea. The occultists, the Thelemites, refer to it as the Great Work, to burn down the old age and build back better. And that's what's happening right now. The Great Work is being realized. That's what the Great Reset actually is.
Well, the great work of the Freemasons, which, long considered Saturn's cube or Metatron's cube to be the prison of Satan himself, right? Or Abaddon, the destroyer, Trump's apartment. So one day he'll be free, and they believe this is the era that he'll be free, right? It's the age of Aquarius. We've switched over. Now it's the coming of the Antichrist. And once that happens, then this Abaddon entity will be released from Metatron's cube and will be able to reign over this plane or planet once again.
Yeah, I've came across that information before, and I think that it's fundamentally right. The New Age and whatever is about to happen, the iconography speaks for itself. Hey, I got a commenter in chat. Lonely Chef says, "Did you say Jesus was born in winter?" Well, I said so. That's kind of the belief. Christmas, it's a belief. You might have a different belief, but you don't have different facts. And I don't have any facts. I just have the story that's based on the sun's personification. And look, there are many, many, many people who are in denial that Jesus is a sun personification. And you can die with your faith intact. I'm not trying to challenge that. Believe what you want. I'm just going off of facts. And the facts speak for themselves. The belief thing and the fact thing, this is a very touchy subject. But when it comes to the news media, they've actually, I think, they've managed to restore a sort of religiosity about beliefs. Like, you don't believe the news. That's a problem. Well, the believers don't have any facts. So to me, that's a problem. So if I offend somebody because of their beliefs, it's like, well, we're not really about um, treading carefully over beliefs here, because the world is full of false beliefs that have been deliberately sown, and we're just trying to get to the truth. So hopefully the truth isn't offending anybody here.
More likely, the historical Jesus would have been born in the springtime or right around the 9th of Av in September, based on the foliage or trees in the area and based on the overt anti activities of Bohemian Grove, etc., and 9/11. So I would say those would be the historical dates of Jesus' birth. It got tacked on to sun worshiping cults for obvious reasons. People like the holidays, and it's kind of still true. People like the winter holiday.
Sure, sure. If you
So
want
I
to
think
believe in
that's
the
kind of
historical Jesus, it would make more sense what you've described. If you want to believe in that particular story, however, the sun god journey, or the journey of the sun throughout the year, is what I'm referring to, because that's what the elite are about. They're not about the quote historical Jesus. They're more about the archetype. And today, the New Agers they're phasing out the Jesus Osiris archetype, and they use these interchangeably. And the god for the New Age is Horus, the child androgen. The child is representative of a new start without being saddled by a couple thousand years of tradition or baggage. It's all new, blank slate. Out with the old, in with the new. And I happen to think that Greta Thunberg at the UN announcing this "How dare you" speech to the older generation, yeah, I think that was pretty much announcing the Great Reset, the great work, the new age, the age of Horus, or the Aeon of Horus, where they phase out all of the old paradigms attached to the patriarchal dying sun god. So, whatever you think about Jesus, they're phasing him out.
and clearly attacking organized religion or whatever you think about religion. But I happen to think it has a place as far as keeping moral standards going. But in spite of that, they're clearly attacking organized religion and faith and spirituality. So again, more towards the material, less towards the spiritual. And
Attacking,
I
yeah,
do
sure,
feel
but it's not being suppressed. I mean, the old moral values, traditional values, are being destroyed. They've pretty much turned family into the new F word. They're trying to destroy the lexicon that we use to describe the family, and it's all part of destroying the family unit, so that you can just have a more direct one-on-one relationship with Big Brother. But I don't think religion's going away. It's just been replaced. The dominant religion of the day, in my opinion, is the mainstream media. That's why I mentioned this replacement flood god myth, the virus as a replacement for sin. They have reintroduced transcendence with digital transcendence, space as heaven. To me, this is all just a replacement faith, and the Bible has been supplanted and replaced by the television. And that's quite literally true. That the new Bible is the curated mainstream media, sans all the conspiracy theorists. Once they perfect that worldview that everyone agrees with, yeah, they won't need all these competing religions. We're all on the same sheet. It's the new universal religion. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's coming from you through a black screen, from a black cube. It's the Saturnian religion. It's the Abrahamic faith with a new face.
well, so yeah, it's the black cube from 2001: Space Odyssey. That's the without the black cube, you can't see the reality of your present time, and that's really if you don't become digitized soon with your digital ID and digital passport, then you can't not be part of this new digital you of the future. I do think, remember when they pulled the Maya, the world's gonna end um, deal, and it was the same type of fear tactic for a lot of people. But I do think there's a parallel with this changing of the equinox, or the precision of the equinox that the Mayas would talk about. They had a 26,000 year cycle, but similar 12 signs of the zodiac. And so it didn't happen exactly on time, but it's in their sense of time, it's still kind of happening. I don't know if you've tied this into where the elites have this same type of psychopathy with their timing of things.
Well, from my
So in other
background,
words, not date.
I learned
But
about this procession of the aeons and this New Age thing from my own investigations into this area. I was involved with the Thelemic cults right after I left the military. And I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I just long enough. And it was even during the initial interviews before they ever took me in, where they explained to me that we're processing out of the Aeon of Osiris, and the great work is the tearing down of the old structures. And it's the whole phoenix was explained to me, and the phoenix is synonymous with the dove that shows up after the flood. And the symbolism here is a reset. So I was already getting prepared for a reset. I was told by these individuals that the New Age represents a paradigm that is a perfect mix of male and female. So instead of being male dominated, it'll be not hermaphrodite, it'll be a perfect mix of male and female. Androgen was the term. And they described the New Age would be the age of Horus that the Egyptians venerated as Mars. So I'm like, wait, the space age going to Mars, this whole Mars program, and SpaceX with their Falcon. Falcon is the representative of Horus. So Falcon going to Mars, the symbolism is 100% intact, and it goes all the way back to Jack Parsons, the American counterpart of Aleister Crowley, bringing in the New Age. And Crowley talked about that his work was actually just the rediscovery of the Sumerian Babylonian tradition. And I think that's what we're seeing. So I'm looking at the New Age as synonymous with the space age, and that they're telling us we're going to Mars as a cover for transforming our world into the age of Horus, which will be lockdown culture, dumbed down hive mind, collectivist, basically the brave new world. And what's more is they insisted I read a certain collection of books. One of them was Stranger in a Strange Land, Robert Heinlein, and they told me this is our blueprint for a perfect Thelemic world order. And that book, Robert Heinlein, is about a Martian coming back to Earth. And basically they have this world church now. But Robert Heinlein had a literary club in Laurel Canyon. Among its members, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, among others. So, yeah, I think that the space program is quite literally how they're bringing about the occult New Age. I think that's the whole purpose of it.
the other two more characters on Laurel Canyon, you have the Doors singer born there, his father being military, doing the false flag of, help me out here.
Oh yeah, the Gulf of Tonkin. You're talking
Tonka.
about
Tonka.
Rear
Yes.
Admiral Morrison, father of Mr. Mojo
Correct.
Risen.
Mr. Mojo Rising, Mr. Try to push the envelope for our controllers at the time, tied into the other cults in the area, Manson killings. And then recently you have a sort of parallel actor up there. God, what's his name? I'm not good with actors.
It's not a bad thing,
Anyway, there's a
the idol worship is so
modern version.
obligatory, and if you manage to escape it, if I don't know who a certain celebrity is that everyone's kneeling to, I consider myself lucky. But the whole '60s counterculture thing, the whole fake counterculture.
It's such an obvious controlled government operation, and the people that went through it think they went through something. It's the most bizarre. It's really the perfect example of a metascript. We don't have to even talk about the present metascript. Just look at that metascript. Here, take a bunch of acid. You go have sex with these hookers. We're gonna watch you through double mirrors. You guys go to this concert where these guys are telling you to do all these free things or whatever, which is just a repackaging back to your L. Ron Hubbard and friends of do what thou wilt, which is the same programming, right? And you get Helter Skelter going on at the same time. You get the Beatles transformation from the good guys into the push the envelope guys. All part of the Tavistock Institute programming.
Fascinating. Kind of like they do with all these pop stars. They're all wholesome Disney, like Hannah Montana, and then she turns into this like twerking, whatever she is now. But
Over
she,
and over.
but her tongue hanging out, just acting very, the opposite that she was. And it's like, well, if you were following her lead, you went from that to that in no time. And it seems like a pattern. And they know that human beings are that we follow people. A lot of people are they just follow their idols. And
Back to the image on the TV. I happened to have a gig where I worked at Nickelodeon, so I met the guy that got fired, and I did a few months working there. He was like within 10 minutes, I knew he was a pedo freak, right? So I'll look him up. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but the interesting thing was the Pretty Woman's actress's niece was the star on the show, and she was already obviously taken in with the whole programming thing. Like she snapped in from 14-year-old girl to, hey, let's go party and do drugs after the gig, and not like it was a split personality thing. It blew me away. I left there going like, what the hell? What just happened? And then years later, after putting all this together, I realized, okay, well, she's just like her mom. She's in that thing. They get programmed. They get abused early. Britney Spears was another one that got pulled through there, right?
yeah,
You can
and
see the photos of her.
yeah, Britney Spears has been saying some bizarre things lately. She says that she was subjected to, I think she even said Illuminati rituals. She claims they took 8 gallons of blood from her a week, which I don't know if that's possible, but she claims they were literally sucking her blood and controlling her.
So that guy's name's Schneider, Dan Schneider, who was fired, and they closed down one of the facilities in Hollywood there as a result of. But nothing happens as usual, just like the Guardians of the Galaxy guy that was obviously caught red-handed pedo shit. Like all of them, they get red-handed caught because they're all in on it.
Wow, I didn't know about
So
that
yeah,
one.
it gets protected, huh?
I didn't know about that one. I mean,
Guardians of the Galaxy
wow.
one.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't know about that. I heard that at Disney. I mean, yeah, I constantly hear these things. And in fact, earlier we were talking about Anton LaVey and the Temple of Set. Well, there's another uh, character in the mix there, Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger was like a co-founder in the Church of Satan and a filmmaker. Anyway, Kenneth Anger was a Mickey Mouseketeer when he was a kid, and he claims from
Because it starts with the founder, the founder.
yeah, yeah, exactly. He said that if you look at these old Disney cartoons, you have little cartoon kids with pajamas where the bottoms open up, a lot of spankings, and a lot of stuff like that that apparently he was obsessed with. And Kenneth Anger actually claimed, and he wrote Hollywood Babylon, where he was exposing the seedy underbelly of Hollywood way back then. But he said that Walt Disney was a full-on abuser, predator, all that stuff, sicko. Doesn't surprise me.
He was the known feeder group of the Freemasons. That's on record. He was obviously a Freemason. Club 33 at Disneyland. That James Gunn for Guardians of the Galaxy was briefly fired because on his Twitter account he had overt pedophile imagery and like, oh, this kid's ass looks good. I want to do stuff, things like that. Just crazy shit. And people are like, okay, that's not funny. That's not funny. See, they had to get rid of him for like 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, and they brought him back.
Wow,
So
like the priests do. They just move them around. That's insane. And you know what? It shouldn't surprise us. Everything that you hear about the churches, the
yeah, the
religions.
fact that they use them and
Yep.
bring them back and shows you it's a controlled situation, right?
Exactly. That's what I mean. And I think it's a parallel system. When I say the media is the replacement religion, yeah, and it brings all that with it too. Look at all the sickos at CNN. I used to joke that CNN probably has a ping pong pizza dungeon in the basement. And sure enough, you find out, yeah, it's just a bunch of sickos and they all watch out for each other. And Don Lemon scares me. I would never want to be trapped in an elevator with that guy.
Well, look at the original programming from the 70s. I don't know if you looked into this or you remember it, but I don't know your age, but they had the satanic panic, right? And the whole school in Los Angeles that later the mom and son were found guilty, at least in civil trials of abuse. But this was years later after the incident. But now, after a Freedom of Information Act release, it shows that the incident actually happened. And there's basically 3 layers of cover up or 3 layers of the filter that they threw on top of it. So they have the quote overt Satanists playing their gig. Then they have the actual perps that are either FBI / whatever. And then another level of people that are the, occultists or what have you. So they frame the Satanists, make it look super, like, no way, there's no such thing. There's not a satanic cult. And that's what was on Phil Donahue at the time, the Oprah Winfrey at the time. So that was Celestial. That was like 2 years of that. It went away. Everyone said, oh, that was just, kids making up stories. Well, as it turns out, not making up stories, and there's physical evidence.
Fascinating. I remember reading about the McMartin daycare centers, about tunnels, and then they said the kids were being, faulty eyewitness testimony, false memories. But yeah, it's all very, very interesting. I think it's true though. I read about the Satanic Panic, and I think it's true though that they create this fictional version of what the bad guys look like. So people think of Satanists as horns and sacrificing goats and Marilyn Manson and pentagrams, but the types of people that we're actually looking at here at Bohemian Grove, that yeah, they all wear sheepskins around you. They don't show it. Devil's Advocate is a pretty good idea of how this thing might even work too. If you watch that movie, where it starts out with the lawyer has to compromise himself by defending a child abuser, and when he does, he gets all the perks and he gets to go hang out with the devil and all that stuff. And the devil's office happens to be what Trump's office, where Al Pacino's staying in that movie.
Yeah, no coincidence there. Devil tied into Trump.
Yeah,
well,
in fact, yeah. But anyway, hey, Bohemian Grove. Go ahead.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say
No,
it's, but yeah, call back anytime. Um, this you brought up some interesting points about Laurel Canyon, about Club 33. I guess the only thing we didn't touch on really quick here with Disney before we move on from that topic is the Nazi thing. Disney hanging out with Werner von Braun, who wrote a book about an Elon, a guy named Elon, or a dictator on Mars called the Elon. And it's like Mars, a Technical Tale, a book about the first trip to Mars and the first colony. So you have a Nazi Disney connection to SpaceX.
Well, and the name Elon's not exactly a normal name, so that less of a coincidence. How about William Barr's father, writing the book about capturing children and bringing them to Mars and making them slaves in your pedophile cult?
Space Relations by Donald Barr, father of A.G. Barr. Yeah, and then Donald Barr hired Jeffrey
Epstein. They're in the same camp, is what I'm trying to point out.
Yep, exactly.
There is no space. They're actually going down below in their little tunnels and raping kids. There's your truth. So there you go.
Appreciate it, man. And you're right about that.
They shoot rockets, though.
They shoot rockets up, but I think they're programming us for Hyperloop, because the Hyperloop will simulate rocket travel in space when you'll just be going underground to some subterranean Epstein Island.
I don't think we get to underground. Underground's just for their minion cult. So we'll be good not to make it to the underground.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll die with my boots on the terrain.
Yeah, I think deep space. God, there's a really good movie, Orbiter 9. If anybody, it's a good movie to fall asleep to. Orbiter 9. It's about this secret space program of space travels under Colorado beneath a military base, and all the people on these ships are actually just guinea pigs. But anyway, hey, it's been a great call. We'll probably do live open calls a little bit earlier tomorrow. But anyway, appreciate your time and all of your comments and everything.
All right, Kim, keep up the good work. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a great night. All right, we've had some excellent callers tonight. Let me go ahead and see what we've missed in the chat. Apparently, there was a Q-friendly person who didn't call in. Somebody mentions, oh, okay, a couple other things. We're talking about a little bit about William or Donald Barr. Donald Barr and Epstein in the book Space Relations. Okay, here's the connection. Donald Barr writes a book called Space Relations, a gothic interplanetary tale about kidnapped teenage sex slaves on distant islands, basically in outer space, small island planets. He hires Jeffrey Epstein to work at a high school. So they're at a high school around teenagers, and this guy's writing this sick stuff. And he hires Epstein. So Epstein and Barr are BFFs. Well, there's actually an STD called the Epstein-Barr virus, a sexually transmitted disease called Epstein-Barr. And I'm like, well, that's really weird. Epstein-Barr virus, and apparently they found a way to cure it with the COVID vax. But a side note. So I'm thinking Epstein-Barr virus, what's the connection there? Well, the connection is sex trafficking, these two sickos, an STD named after him, and then finally, if you catch that virus, it will give you AIWS, the Alice in Wonderland syndrome. And what is that? Well, first of all, Alice in Wonderland is constantly used in all kinds of movies, all kinds of references made to Alice in Wonderland, specifically with regard to mind control. Mind-controlled victims in Wonderland. Very common theme. So, if you catch the Epstein-Barr virus, you would have this. The Alice in Wonderland syndrome, a neurological disorder characterized by distortions of visual perception and the experience of time. People may see things smaller than they are, feel their body alter in size, or experience basically a distortion of your space relations, your sense of time and space. So I thought that's very unusual. Not only do you have the Epstein-Barr sex trafficking connection there, one fantasy and speculative, the other actually doing it, but then you have a disease named after him, a sexually transmitted disease that gives a symptom that definitely relates to mind-controlled trafficked victims. And then when you get into Alice in Wonderland and Lewis Carroll, the writer, Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, the whole thing is about what? Subterranean space travel, zero G, falling down that hole into Wonderland. And what's more, Lewis Carroll was the first one to posit the idea of traveling in a vacuum. He said if you could drill a hole connecting continents and suck the air out, you would be able to have frictionless travel through the Earth. Someone later expounded on that, and they did the calculation, and they said that you could go through the Earth in 42 minutes. All right, let me see. In the chat here, Jared Board says, it sounds like doing LSD. It does. That's what I'm talking about here. I'm thinking we're looking at drugged, mind-controlled victims being referenced here in some way. None of these connections are coincidental. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to the 24/7 live stream here in just a few moments. I believe we've covered most of the things I wanted to talk about today. A tiger named Putin. Yes, a big tiger named Putin died today. Is that foreshadowing? Is that a hint? He was born in 2009, so it lived a typical age of a tiger. I would have thought longer because of the captivity, but anyway, the name was Putin. And it was during a routine procedure. And so I'm thinking, wait a minute. It was happening during a procedure. That's a little suspect. All right, get on the newsletter if you haven't. I'll be posting some updates about a lot of things. And on the last newsletter, I posted a link to the Jordan Maxwell podcast, the last one that we did, or one of the last ones. So I might actually just play that again after this here shortly. I'll put it into the playlist. The new Batman movie If anyone hasn't seen it yet, the Riddler is Q, so I'm following that narrative. It's noteworthy that the day the movie came out, 3/4, Joker, the Boston bomber, had his death penalty reinstated. I mean, what are the odds? Joker, Batman, death penalty reinstated on that day. Theme is food shortages in the news today. Right. Someone is yeah, that's probably getting us ready for Soylent Green. Clockwork says I was hoping for Ron Watkins to call in. No, he didn't call in. I did touch base with him. We'll probably do something tomorrow. So get on the text message notifications. I didn't have any credits tonight to send out text notifications, but I will by tomorrow. So if I do get this interview with this person, I will definitely hit you up. Also, I have a commercial here I'm going to close on before we go. This is 1984, Fruit of the Loom. There's no cornucopia on the tag there. So this contradicts the conspiracy theory that the Fruit of the Loom used to have that you used to have a cornucopia in your pants, Brian Stavely. Anyway, we did spend a lot of time today talking about the Mandela effect, and I was doing all kinds of research. I found evidence that Ed McMahon was with American Family Publishing. He didn't like mix-up. Meatloaf was always Meat Loaf. Nobody ever called him.
What a fabulous vacation! That was a year ago. Hey.
Okay, this is a commercial from. This is 1984. It's an underwear commercial for Fruit of the Loom, and you'll see the grape, the apple, the banana.
There's the Fruit of the Loom, guys.
And there's no cornucopia. Again, the Horn of Plenty might.
I bought you this Fruit of the Loom underwear on that trip.
How are we holding up?
Terrific!
Our super seams keep us strong, and our super band waistband keeps snapping back.
Wash after wash.
You fellas really last. Next vacation.
Okay, so my point is this. If the Mandela effect is real, even though the logo changed and the cornucopia is taken away, there's no place here where a cornucopia guy would fit. What would a cornucopia costume look like? Like there's no place for it. You know, like with many of these so-called Mandela effects, you just scratch the surface a little bit and you'll see that there really isn't any reason to jump to that radical of a conclusion. You know, that you're looking at something supernatural. Calamento says the cornucopia is the woman's basket. What? I'll take another look at that one another time. I have the link here if you want to take a look. Anything else here? Someone sent this to me. I didn't know what I was supposed to see, and then I just noticed it now. Sean Hannity's now openly wearing a CIA pin on his chest. Nothing to see